There's no time.
Lost. Times. Darkness.
The time is
13.
o'clock.
Hello, everybody out there. It's us again, and we're doing episode 163.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different this time. It's a variety of cases.
Yeah, this is like a variety show.
Yeah. My voice is still messed up, but it's not as bad as it was on that last show that we did. I'll be able to talk a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully. As long as you
Yeah.
don't like talk too much through the whole thing, and it's
Right.
like then start losing it toward the end of the show. Because this might run a little long because I have a lot of...
Yeah, so I'm not even drinking on this show.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let you people be mesmerized by my sexy voice. My sexy raspy voice. This is like my sex voice, Jenny. Did you wish I had some shit like this? I could just flip a switch like that. I'm like, hey, Jenny. Go ahead and roll over. See, she loves that shit.
I do love
Go
that.
ahead and roll over.
Oh man, he started early. He doesn't
Starting
even
this shit
he
early.
doesn't even need liquor. You guys.
No.
I don't have any either. This
Yeah.
is iced tea. I promise.
Yeah.
Because we're just recording a little bit earlier in the day, and we just didn't want to like seem like drunks,
Yeah.
like drinking at like 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'll drink later on tonight.
Yeah, I probably will too because
It's too early.
It's Saturday. We're filming this. But what I decided to do with this, because this show is going to be going up on October 1st, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be neat to just kind of like focus on, it's not that we don't usually focus on like horrific topics and stuff, because we do, but I said, wouldn't it be neat to do just like a more horror, kind of themed month, all through October.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be good too. We actually did one, I'm just calling it real life horrors, because I'm basically talking about a bunch of real life cases that...
I forgot something.
Oh, you forgot Dennis.
I gotta bring Dennis down there.
Yeah, Dennis
Dennis might have to say some shit.
Yeah.
Dennis might have to say something. Hold on. Come move the microphone a little closer to
Yeah.
us.
Oh, you got to be careful though,
I'm
because
not raspy
when you move him, it
Then
like
it makes all kinds of noise. All right.
So you might just have to like not
right.
move him and just kind of lean over there and do
Oh,
it.
okay. That's good.
But yeah. So we did a similar thing, which I called real life horror or reel to reel or something like that, where I was kind of talking about real cases behind horror movies. And we did one like that, like way the hell back on episode 36. Do you remember that? It's like we talked about, we did like the Dybbuk box case,
Yeah.
the Philip experiment, the Aokigahara suicide forest, and murder of Sylvia Likens, which was what the novel and movie The Girl Next Door was based on. And I said, that might be kind of like another cool topic to revisit, because it happened that I got like a bunch of topic requests from like people on YouTube and like people that emailed me and stuff. And some of those topics I really wanted to do, but I didn't know if they were long enough to do like a whole show. So I thought, well, I'll just like compile them all on one show. And then that'll be like an October show that's like horror movies, but like the real life stories.
So this would be a good variety show.
Yeah, and we'll like get to cover a lot of ground. I don't know how long this is going to take because I have like a lot of notes and stuff.
It's going to take as long as it takes.
It'll take as long as it takes, but that's what we're going to do.
I don't think it'll probably take 2 hours.
Yeah, probably. Maybe 2.5. We'll see how it goes.
All right.
Since it's 5. Now, other than that, just standard shout outs. Faceless Villain 3 is out. You guys know that. Associated Villainies, which is my fiction compilation. The second edition is out in print, ebook, and audiobook format. So if you
that audiobook finally came out, huh? How long's the audiobook?
Oh, actually, no. It's like...
It's because audiobook wasn't out.
Yeah, that's true. It hasn't gone up yet, but it might be up by the time this goes up. Because it seems like it's about time.
Right.
But, and I haven't gotten any messages saying there's anything wrong with it. So maybe it'll be out. And if it's not, then whatever. I'll just... whatever. Also, for the Halloween show at the end of October, I was thinking about revisiting our scary stories type of thing, where people send in like scary stories and anecdotes and stuff like that. So if you guys would like to send in, I already have a couple. that somebody sent me that I will read on the show. Like I said, we can read other shit. I can read some of my own stories. Like we can read like fucking public domain stories. I don't know if we don't get enough.
Yeah, well, it can't be real long. That one time we got one that was it was like a book.
I know, and it's
Yeah.
like I really liked that one
But
too,
you
but I
can't
was
read.
just like I couldn't read it too long. But
It'd
yeah,
been
so
like a 6-hour show. A 7-hour
yeah,
show.
so as long as it's like not all that long, you know what I mean, then I'll put the email address in the description so you can send them along and we will read them on our fun Halloween show. Just like we did last year, because everybody seemed to like that. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so now let's get to some of these cases. These are not in any particular order, just kind of the order that I took notes about them in. So as I said, we're going to cover 5 different cases on this show that were the bases of horror movies at one
That's right.
time or another.
So stories that were the basis of horror movies.
Yes, it's like the real
And
shit.
you know
right?
these movies. You know these movies. They're pretty common movies.
Most of them are pretty
Yeah,
well known.
You
yeah.
didn't know it was based on some shit, but it actually was.
Some
based.
of them, yeah. I think some of them might
Yeah.
be kind of a surprise to people.
Right.
Now, the first one I want to talk about was not only, a case that I've been wanting to talk about and one that's, was the basis of some horror movies, but also
Hold on one second. Though.
was what?
Let's do a teaser. What are the movies that they're all based on?
You want me to say, like,
Say
what the
that what
movies are?
Yeah. What movies all these
Okay.
shows are based on? That way, somebody can know to stay tuned. So, because their favorite movie might be coming up.
All right. Well, the first one
Yeah.
was the basis of the movie The Burning, the slasher movie from 1981,
Okay.
which a very young Tom Savini worked on, if anybody's like all
All right.
excited about that. The second case we're going to talk about was the basis of A Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah, you didn't know that was based on some shit, but it was based on.
based on some real shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, roughly based
Yeah,
on some
kinda.
real shit. Third case based on Brotherhood of the Wolf from 2001.
Yeah.
Directed by Christoph Gans. If you've seen that, it's a very good movie, and I recommend it. The fourth one would be Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes.
Yep. You guys didn't know that.
This was also based on some real
stuff. Yep.
shit. Believe it or not.
Yep. The Hills Have Eyes. It's a great movie if you guys haven't seen it.
And then the last one, the title of it's going to give it away, but the movie was actually a Lifetime movie from 2016 called The Watcher.
Yeah.
And this
And
was
that's-
also based on a real case.
Yeah, and this is a recent case.
Very recent.
Is it still ongoing?
The legal shit is still ongoing,
Okay.
yeah. It actually started in 2014 and went on
Yeah.
for several years, because it was
About
like
a
whole
family being watched mysteriously by somebody somewhere and sending them letters.
Yeah. Now this case in particular, like I said, Lifetime made a movie, and I've seen it. It's actually not bad. They changed a lot of shit about it. They made it a lot weirder than it really is,
Okay,
even
yeah.
despite it being very weird.
Pretty weird, yeah.
But also, I believe that just late last year, like in December 2018, Netflix actually got the rights to this news story
Okay.
and are planning on making either a movie or a series out of it.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. And,
All right.
and I'm imagining that it will hew closer to.
All right, so that's the teaser. Let's get to
Yeah.
this first story. Get to this
So the
story.
first case that I want to talk about that I said was the basis of the 1981 slasher film The Burning was also the subject of a very popular documentary called Cropsey.
Yeah, I saw that documentary
I did too, and I actually watched it again today. It's on Tubi for free.
about an orphanage.
It's not
Was
an
it- was it an
orphanage.
orphanage?
It's a school for disabled children.
Yeah, but they lived there. It was kind of like
Yeah,
it was kind of like an asylum,
like an asylum. Yeah.
for mentally ill children.
That was one of the things that was on. Now, the weird thing about this case, though, is that the legend of Cropsey was around long before there was, like, any murders and shit to go along with. Like, the murder shit happened later. So it was almost kind of like an urban legend that sort of came true, like, later on,
Yeah,
which I thought was kind of... It didn't come true, like, in a one-to-one fashion. It's like, you know what I mean? But it was just really weird how all these stories about Cropsey. Now,
and that movie that I saw called Cropsey, it was a documentary.
It's a documentary.
It was true, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it wasn't like a mockumentary or a horror documentary.
No.
Okay, because it was pretty weird what happened there.
yeah, and it's like I said,
Yeah.
it's not, it's not so much the documentary, the people that made it, the couple that made it, they also did a documentary called Killer Legends, which might be on Netflix still. I think I saw it on there a long time ago. And they're from Staten Island. And the legend of Cropsey is very Staten Island specific. Now, no one is sure entirely where the urban legend came from. It's basically a variation of the killer with the hook hand story, although sometimes he's an axe murderer. He was supposed to be an escaped mental patient who was like running around killing kids and stuff. And this, I couldn't really find a source for how far back that urban legend goes. I mean, the hook hand killer, I mean, that goes back a long fucking way. Like, and this is like a variation of that. So what this dude supposedly did, like I said, he either had a hook or he had an axe, and he would kidnap children and take them to this like underground tunnel system underneath this old hospital called Seaview Hospital, which used to be like a sanitarium for people with tuberculosis. And it was, I don't remember when it was closed, but it was like a really long time ago. So there were people in this Cropsey documentary that were talking about, you know, them when they were kids, like I'm thinking like in the 60s and 70s, and that was like a big, like everybody knew about it. Like you go to like your Boy Scout camp or whatever, and they would like talk about, oh, you better not go down here or go down there or go around that hospital or anything like that because Cropsey will get you.
All right.
You know what I mean? So, and as I said, the movie that came out in 1981, The Burning, actually took, you know, a variation of that, like that happened at a summer camp, much like Friday the 13th, and, you know, and made the narrative out of it. And the murderer in that one was named George Cropsey. And apparently he had like a prank played on him by some kids or something. He got disfigured and he got pissed off, so he went around and started killing little kids.
So the story goes, he escaped from that
from a mental
institution,
asylum. Yeah,
as a kid or a teenager or something.
Something like that.
He lived out there kind of like Jason.
Yeah,
and was killing people who were camping.
Pretty much. That's one of the variations. Yeah. Okay.
And there was a place called Cropsey. It was an institution. I saw the.
No, that was.
Wasn't that the name of the institution?
No.
Okay.
The hospital's named Seaview, and then there was another one named Willowbrook, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay, so Cropsey is explicitly just the name of that guy.
Yeah, and the weird thing about it is that no one's entirely sure where that name came from or why it came to be related to, like, because like like in 1823 there was a guy named Jasper Cropsey who was born on a farm in Staten Island, who was actually kind of a famous painter later on of the Hudson River School. He didn't kill anybody, as far as I know. But for whatever reason, that name got attached to this urban legend about this serial killer with a hook hand or with an axe or whatever.
Right.
Now, the weird thing about it, though, as long as this urban legend had been going on, and on Staten Island they knew all the kids knew about Cropsey, that was like, you know, their kind of, that was their urban legend from that area. But as it turned out, later on, there was a real guy who was killing people in Staten Island, kidnapping kids and killing them. Usually kids with developmental disabilities or, you know, various other like mental problems or, you know, intellectual disabilities or something like that. And his name was Andre Rand. Now, he had actually worked, I've seen different sources say he either worked as a janitor or as a physical therapist at Willowbrook State School. Now, this, unlike Seaview Hospital, which was the tuberculosis hospital, Willowbrook State School was for, you know, kids with, you know, mental retardation or, you know, other things of that nature. Now, the institution was built for that, but because it wasn't really, this kind of stuff wasn't really regulated all that stringently in the 60s and 70s, there was all kind of horrible shit going on at this place. Now, in 1972, well, I mean, before this, everybody that lived around there kind of knew, like, all these rumors that, you know, that there was all kind of abuse going on there. There were reportedly, they would give the kids, like, healthy kids, like, physically healthy kids in the hospital, they would give them tuberculosis, or hepatitis, rather. They would give them hepatitis, like, as, you know, like, as a research experiment, like.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, actually.
Yeah, that went on a lot.
Right.
That went on a lot. Because these were kids that had generally been abandoned by their parents there because they had problems.
Yeah, you find out that a bunch of CIA and government groups and corporations did all kinds of stuff like that in institutions. They
Yeah.
get special government contracts with these institutions. Then next thing you know, they're paying the government to conduct research there. And then it kind of escalates into where they're doing human experimentation in some of these places.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. And some of it was going on in Canada, you know, like CIA mind control stuff going on in Canada, where they were taking perfectly healthy women who were married, maybe they had depression, to go in there and just totally erase their minds using all that LSD, sensory deprivation and stuff.
Yeah.
And they'd come out, they'd be a totally different person. That's some spooky shit.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, we
didn't
talked
we,
about
on
it. Yeah.
One of our like.
Yeah,
maybe
and the
MK
U.S.
Ultra
government
show or
was, CIA was responsible for it.
something. Yeah.
So that wouldn't surprise me. And I also heard about this particular institution you're talking about during that documentary I saw about it. Basically, healthy kids could get sent there.
Well, that wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah.
Because you know.
They could just get kind of shuffled through institutions, and somebody could go, you know, I don't like you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sending you to this place.
Yeah, if they were
There's
if they were
nothing
just
wrong
like
with
a
them.
brat or something,
You're right,
like
yeah,
if
just
they
a
were
brat.
just like a behavioral.
Yeah, just somebody in the system somewhere wanted to get rid of this kid.
Yeah.
You know, they'd send him there, and then they had like some of the staff was bad. You know, like child abusers and child molesters,
Yeah.
and you know, they were molesting some of them boys and killing some of them. I think they found some bodies on there.
Probably.
Out there, according to that, if I remember correctly. I think they found some kids that had been buried out there, because some of them died just like of natural causes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They had an on-site cemetery, you know, because some of them just got sick. People die.
Yeah.
And that institution was there for a long time. But evidently, some of those deaths were kind of questionable. Like, the documentation on them wasn't all that tight.
Well, like I said.
And, you know what I mean? Some people kind of thought that maybe the kids might have been murdered in there and covered up. Whether or not the staff did it or another kid did it, you don't know. But
Well, it wouldn't shock me if like a lot of deaths took place there just because the conditions were so unsanitary. I mean, it was overcrowded.
yeah,
And like I said, so in 1972, a very young Geraldo Rivera decided to do an expose on Willowbrook.
he was back to his old magic even back in '72, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, looking for fucking Al Capone's vault and all that. Man, I remember.
Well,
him when I was a kid.
this was actually a lot more. I mean, that went over like a wet fart, but it's
Yeah.
like, you know, this one, he actually did him and his camera crew like turned
Yeah.
up one day to document it, and they, you know, they weren't ready for them or anything like that. And the shit
Okay.
he filmed in there is horrifying.
It's probably still around. You can find it.
Well, and if you watch the Cropsey documentary, which, like I said, I recommend it. It's on Tubi. You can watch it for free. They show like clips from Geraldo Rivera's expose in that documentary,
Yeah.
where he went into this place, and these were all, you know, these were all, you know, retarded children, you know, or whatever they call them now. So like, you know, with mental disabilities and stuff like that. Some of them had physical disabilities as well, like Down syndrome, things like that. And the kids were just, most of them were either naked or half naked. They were just like sitting around by the wall, just like rocking back and forth, or like sitting around with their hands over their, some of them had shit themselves.
Yeah.
It was just like a horrible, you know, and Geraldo is as big a douche as he is, but I mean, he was just like talking about, it was just like the most horrific thing he'd ever seen. And he said it just smelled like, he couldn't even describe like what it smelled like in there. Because they just never even, because like I said, this was 1972. They didn't really have a lot of, I mean, doesn't sound like, it's not actually that long ago. It was the year I was born, but they didn't really have a lot of protections in place for people with those types of mental disabilities, especially if their parents had just left them there, or if the foster system had just left them there, if they were orphaned or whatever. So they didn't really have any laws in place to protect them. Yeah. So they would just end up in this place, and it was overcrowded, and no one really cared, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of makes you question your own value system. I mean, what happens when you have kids that are like that, super mentally handicapped? They normally probably wouldn't have a real good quality of life. Then they get discarded. In the wild, they would die. So what they do is they just put them in basically a prison, and the the population density inside that prison is very high. So then the quality of life declines even further.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of like in a living hell. It's like hell for fucking mentally handicapped people. Do you start considering euthanasia at that point?
Well, and the thing about it is that, when I saw these clips from this expose, it's like, you don't know what those kids were like before they were put in that situation.
Yeah, they might have got a lot worse in there.
That's what I mean. So it's like at that point, because you're just like allowed to like just live in filth and like not be dressed and like shit like that. So it's like obviously they're going to degenerate if they were like taken care of properly.
Yeah, and in an ideal world that happens.
Yeah.
But this is not an ideal world. You can't get the staff. That's a big problem. Nobody wants that job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, to get good people, you have to pay them a lot, and then they're under budget, and still, people don't want to live in that environment. Just kind of like people don't want to be prison guards.
Yeah.
The people that end up being prison guards, you know what I mean? They're not really that different from a prisoner in some cases, and it's like, even though I got a lot of respect for cops can go bad because of what they see every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
and I knew a guy. I used to work with a guy who he wasn't a cop when I knew him, but he went through, police school. He went through the police academy, and he became a cop like while he was working with us. Like he started part-time. And I saw his kind of like his loss of faith in humanity. You know what I mean? It just started like ebbing away every day.
I'm going to say, ideally, you have kids that are handicapped like this. They stay with their parents, and their parents take care of them. They live the best life they can. That happens sometimes, but a lot of times that doesn't happen because not all parents can handle that.
Yeah.
Or they have time, or they don't have time for that because they'd have to stop their entire life, and maybe they have careers and stuff,
Or maybe they can't afford it.
They can't afford it, so they end up in these institutions, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So what is the correct thing to do? I mean, I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my life in an institution like that. I'd rather you kill me.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's the thing. There's no easy solution to that.
Yeah,
there just isn't. There's no good.
If you're going to send me to a hell like that, I'd say, nah, give me that lethal dose of damn morphine.
Yeah.
I'll wake up later and we'll see, I'll see you on the other side, Because, but then how do you legislate that into reality? Because you know how the public will respond to that.
Well, that's what I mean.
You kill all these.
You can't legislate it because everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's like if you had a kid like that and the parents were perfectly willing to like take care of them and give that kid the best life they could give them, then it's like they should be allowed to do that. Obviously,
the secret is amniocentesis. It's really good.
Well,
so
like I said,
what's coming.
It's obviously a lot better nowadays because it's terrible to say, I guess, but you
better to prevent it.
You can there's more preventative measures.
Yeah.
Back in the 50s, 60s, or earlier than that, which before they had amniocentesis, before they had any of that stuff, and before they knew about like a lot of the birth defects and like things in your diet or things that could in the environment that could cause it.
And a woman's age, because after 40 it progressively gets more and more risky.
Yeah, so it's like,
Down syndrome.
Yeah, now that everybody, now that most people know those things,
right.
It's easier to prevent them, so it doesn't, hopefully happen as often. But as I said, back in the early 1970s, they didn't really have any regulations of any kind to protect these types of children. So when Geraldo Rivera did his expose of Willowbrook, it caused like a huge scandal, like all around the country. Yeah. Despite that, it still took 15 more years for them to close this place. So, but silver lining, it did actually, like the scandal that surrounded Willowbrook State Hospital actually did lead to new civil rights legislation, concerning mentally handicapped children and stuff like that, whereas like there's certain legal things in place now that weren't at the time, and it's because of that. Now, this guy, Andre Rand, had worked at the Willowbrook Hospital, and he was actually kind of a drifter. He camped out in the woods, like near the hospital where he worked at. As I said, I've seen most things say he was a janitor, but then when I saw the documentary, they had a couple cops that had investigated him, and they said that he was a physical therapist. So I don't know what's true about that. But now, so Andre Rand, there had been this little girl whose name was Jennifer Schweiger. She was 12 years old, and she had Down syndrome. Now, she had disappeared in early July of 1987 from her neighborhood in Staten Island. Now, she was actually, I don't know if Andre Rand was arrested prior to her body being found, because it took about a month, about 35 days for her body to be found. They had fanned out pretty much everybody in Staten Island, because it's a pretty close-knit community, at least it was at the time. And everyone was really upset about this little girl going missing. So they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, and they were out looking for her. And it so happened that this one kind of citizen group called, I think it was called Friends of Jennifer or something like that. And they were out searching one day, and one of them happened to see this little patch of grass that looked like the dirt had recently been pushed down. And so they started digging there, and they found the little girl's body. Now, because Andre Rand had been living in this area and, had been seen, at least, had been seen in the vicinity and had been seen with Jennifer Schweiger prior to her disappearance, he was arrested and questioned. Now, Andre Rand already had a pretty long criminal record, mostly concerned with children disappearances, sexual assaults, things like that. In 1969, he got 16 months in jail for attempted sexual assault of a 9-year-old girl. In 1983, you'll love this. I mean, it's not good, I'm just saying. 1983, he kidnapped a bus full of kids. They kids had all got on the bus. It was at the YMCA or something like that. He jumps on the bus and drives it off and drives them all to the airport.
Damn. What was he gonna do?
I don't know. He didn't hurt any of them, and They interviewed one of them. The kid was growing up obviously, but they interviewed one of them in the Cropsey documentary. He's like, yeah, he just got on the bus and drove to the fucking airport. He's like, I don't get it. I don't know. It was fucking weird. But yeah. So they suspected him in the disappearance and murder of Jennifer Schweiger. However, they did not have enough physical evidence to convict him or hold him. But they did also suspect him. Now, there had been several other disappearances of children in the Staten Island area, but 4 in particular they thought might have been linked to Andre Rand. Now, these were Alice Pereira, who was 5 years old. She disappeared in 1972, actually. There was a 7-year-old girl named Holly Ann Hughes, who disappeared in 1981 and had actually been seen with Andre Rand shortly before she disappeared. There was also an 11-year-old girl named Thais Jackson. She disappeared in 1983. And a 21-year-old boy, or man, I guess, even though he had a very low IQ, the IQ of a 14-year-old. His name was Hank Gaforia, and he was also last seen with Andre Rand, and then he disappeared. Now, other than Jennifer Schweiger, they did find her body. Those other 4 kids have never been found. They've just disappeared. And like I said, those weren't the only ones. Those are just the 4 main ones that they were trying to tie to Andre Rand, because a lot of people said that they had seen him in the area or had seen them with the kids shortly before they disappeared.
He killed him.
That's kind of what I'm suspecting.
He had a long history. It was all in his area. He was seen with him and then never seen again. Yeah, he killed him.
Yeah, so since there wasn't enough evidence to convict Andre Rand on Jennifer Schweiger's death, he was found guilty of her kidnapping. So he got a 25-year sentence. Now, he would have been eligible for parole in 2008. But 4 years before that, some new information came to light which linked him to the disappearance of Holly Ann Hughes, who, as I said, her body has never been found either. Now, some people who were kids at the time came forward later and said, yeah, I remember seeing him with her, or seeing him take her, seeing him put her in a car, things like that. There was also another inmate that he was in jail with, And that inmate said that that he had told him that he had abducted her. So he was put on trial again for the kidnapping of Holly Ann Hughes, and he got another 25-year sentence. So he actually would not be eligible for parole again until 2037, at which point he will be 93 years old, and I don't imagine that he will live that long. Now, the thing about it, though, is that, and they talked about this quite a lot, because the documentary Cropsey is mostly about Andre Rand and about that case. So they interviewed, like, a lot of people surrounding, and all the disappearances and stuff. The weird thing about it is that it's kind of hard to say, because I do feel like, the guy was in the area. There were several witnesses that placed him in the area, with the kids or around the kids, like, before they disappeared. But some people have said, well, maybe it's just because he wasn't, like, mentally challenged or anything like that, but he's a weird looking dude. And when they brought him out, there's this one very famous picture of him where they're, like, kind of bringing him out of the courthouse, and he's kind of, like, got his face, like, leaned over, and he's drooling, like, you can see drool, like, coming out of his mouth. So some people are speculating that maybe he was kind of vilified because he looked like that, because he looked like he could do some shit like that. Now, like I said, he had been convicted of other things before.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. That's
what I mean. So I do kind of feel like, I don't know, man. So it just seems like
he did it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So here's the weird thing is that, so he had worked at Willowbrook. His own mother had been in and out of mental institutions when he was a child, even though the people that made the Cropsey documentary, who, if I didn't mention it before, named Joshua Zeman and Barbara Brancaccio, who are both from Staten Island. And they tried to interview Andre Rand, because the time they made it, he was still in prison and stuff. And they actually corresponded with him quite a lot, like in letters. And, he's basically vociferously defending his innocence and said that he never did anything. And he actually agreed to meet them face to face. And they went to the prison to interview him. And then he decided he didn't want to talk to them. So they had to leave. They did actually find they tracked down his sister and asked him about, because they had just found out that his mom had also been in a mental institution. They asked the sister if he had been abused or something like that, but she said no. She's like, our mom had some problems and she was in and out of institutions and stuff, but she wasn't abusive or, she wasn't a bad mother or anything like that. So she's like, and I don't have any idea. Like, she said, I don't know if he did it, but it's like, I don't really know his life. I don't know anything about him, because she hadn't talked to him for a really long time. So the thing is, too, that he had worked at Willowbrook for 2 years. I think it was from 1966 to 1968, I believe. Now, in this Cropsey documentary, 2 of the cops that worked on the case, they asked him if he had seen the Geraldo Rivera expose on Willowbrook. And he said, I heard about it, but I didn't see it. And they said, would you like to see it? And he said he would like to see it. So they brought him to a hotel room and showed it to him, like on the VCR. And they said that when he was watching it, he went into, like, they said they thought that maybe he was gonna, like, because he seemed to be getting really upset and, like, watching it. And they thought maybe that he was gonna confess. That's what they were trying to get him to do, like, by showing him this. But they said then he just started getting, like, really horrified by the movie. And then he went into, like, this weird fugue where he just, like, started rocking back and forth and drooling and everything like that. And he stopped talking, and they said he didn't talk for 3 days after that.
Man.
So they don't know if it was, like, some kind of weird PTSD reaction, like, from working there, or if he was faking, or what. So, I don't know. It was just a really weird thing. Now, another person that they talked to in this documentary was this guy who used to, they called him a storefront minister. So he used to have, like, this, I can't remember what the name of the church was, but it was like one of those little, strip mall churches or whatever. Right, yeah. And he had actually, Andre Rand had been staying in his house, like, either a few days before he got arrested or just up until the day where he got arrested. And this minister guy said, no, Andre Rand told me that that he had kidnapped and killed those kids. And he, by his opinion, he said, I think it was because Rand thought that disabled children were unwanted burdens, either on their families or on the world or whatever, and that they needed to be taken out.
So he was saying it was euthanasia.
Yeah, so it was like, in this guy's opinion, he said it was like a mission-oriented type of thing, where he thought that they were a burden.
That's bullshit. I think it was sexual molestation.
Well, it could have been that, too.
That's what I think it was.
Now, there are also very persistent rumors, particularly still on Staten Island, and this is probably inevitable, happening in the 70s and 80s, that Andre Rand was maybe involved in the Process Church, which was kind of like a satanic adjacent type of group, which did actually exist. And that him and some of the other dudes that lived in the woods around there, like, procured children for this cult for sacrifice purposes and whatnot.
Sounds far-fetched to me.
That, yeah. And I do feel like now the couple that made the Cropsey documentary, they were also very skeptical of this. Now, they asked a couple of cops about it, and the cops were kind of cagey. They actually went to either the Seaview Hospital or the Willowbrook Hospital. It was like abandoned. And they went in there and they said, yeah, there was like a couple little like crosses and shit, but it's just like, it just looked like regular graffiti. And the funny thing about it was that when they were in there filming, the woman was just like, I'm not going in there, because it was like the middle of the night and it was like super creepy. And he's like, well, I'm going. They were like having an argument. And then they went in there with their flashlights, and then there was a bunch of teenagers in there, and they weren't doing anything bad. They were just in there like hanging out. They're like, yeah, we just come in here sometime to like tell ghost stories and like scare the shit out of each other and stuff like that. And they were asking them about Satanists, and they said, yeah, I believe they're Satanists, but they actually didn't know because they were younger, and they actually didn't really know about the missing kids and stuff. But so I don't know if I buy the Satan thing. Like I said, some of the cops seem to suggest, yeah, it could have been, and they did have the Process Church, but did they sacrifice people? Would they have kidnapped kids for sacrifice? Who fucking knows? I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to say no, that never happens, but every time some weird fucking case like this happens, particularly in the 70s and 80s, somebody's supposed to look as Satanist, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm always
part of
like,
the satanic panic.
Yeah, I'm always like really, really leery of anything like that, because that's so easy to. It's just such a lurid thing, and it's like you can see why people are attracted to like that kind of shit. But yeah, so as I said, this whole story about Cropsey and on Staten Island and stuff like that, and then this real guy that ended up being, and like I said, he was not convicted of any murders. He's only been 2 kidnappings, because that's all they could get him for. Yeah, they found the one girl's body, but the other 4, they never found any bodies. They have no idea where they are. A lot of the people that helped in looking for the first little girl's body have continued like try to keep the cases in the press, and like they will go and look and stuff, because Staten Island, it's like, yeah, there's like a lot of like decent neighborhoods and stuff like that, but for a long time Staten Island was like, that's where they dumped all the garbage from Manhattan. It was like this huge landfill. And then there was like all these disease hospitals and like insane asylums, and there was like all that kind of stuff. And it's like, even people on this documentary were saying, yeah, it's like, everywhere in New York, if you wanted to dump something, whether you were in the mob and you needed to dump a body, it's like you dumped it on Staten Island. So it's like, yeah, there's like nice neighborhoods now, and it's kind of like a nice neighborhood now, but there's like the seedy underbelly of like all this other kind of stuff. And then it's just weird how they had this long standing urban legend, and that it almost kind of like came true, even though nobody said Andre Rand doesn't have like a hook for a hand or anything like that. And I'm actually not sure how that first little girl was murdered, because she was, so I don't know how she was murdered. Right. And the other bodies they didn't find. So
it wasn't a cause of death on the first one that they found buried?
Not that I know of. Isn't that strange?
It's probably strangulation.
That's what I was going to say, because that's usually the most common in those types of situations.
Strangulation, asphyxiation, something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so
they based that. So what horror movie did they base
The Burning.
The Burning, okay.
Yeah. That was about a serial killer named George Cropsey.
Okay.
And
I didn't see it.
It was good. I saw it a long time ago. Like I said, I saw it because I was really into like, Tom Savini, like all his special effects work and stuff, and that was like one of the first movies he worked on. Okay. So That's how I ended up seeing it. But as I said, so that was the basis of that. That was more the basis of the urban legend. Whereas if you want to know more about the real guy, Andre Rand, then you should probably watch the documentary, which is just called Cropsey, which, like I said, is on Tubi, because that's mostly about him. It talks a little bit about the urban legend too, and like interviews people from Staten Island and like the versions of the story that they heard, but it's mostly about the Andre Rand case. So yeah, you should definitely go check those out. So the next case that I want to talk about is the case behind A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. What's it called? Cambodian what now?
Sleeping deaths.
Cambodian sleeping deaths.
See, that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't know. I mean, obviously, Freddy Krueger isn't real. Just don't be scared. But
you gotta tell them that. Huh? All right.
But it should be noted, and I think a lot of people maybe don't know this, is that Wes Craven got the idea for A Nightmare on Elm Street from a very real and very weird series of deaths. Now, these deaths took place in the late 70s and early 1980s. Wes Craven first read about them because there was a series, I believe it was 3 articles, that appeared in the LA Times. Now, the one in particular that got his attention and gave him the idea for the movie was about a little refugee kid. Him and his family had fled from the Cambodian genocide and were living in Los Angeles. And he had told his parents that he was terrified to go to sleep because he thought he would be attacked in his dreams and would never wake up. Now, he did finally fall asleep, and his parents were relieved, except after he fell asleep in his room, he started screaming his little head off as if he was having a nightmare, and by the time his parents got into his room, he was dead.
No shit. Real case.
Yeah.
Damn.
And it wasn't the only one. So, this is what's fucking weird about this. Now, it turned out, as I said, that this was not an isolated incident by any stretch of the imagination. During the 1980s, there were several dozen cases of mostly Southeast Asian males, teenagers and young men, who died for unknown reasons in their sleep during the 1980s.
Like a self-induced astral projection that they didn't come back.
Something like that. And like I said,
Kinda
they
like
still
how
don't fucking know.
Evidently animals can get so stressed out that they die without any medical cause.
Oh, it's like stress can for sure kill you.
It just kills them. Right.
It just seems really weird how this particular malady seems to disproportionately target young men of the Hmong ethnic group, usually from Laos, and they are usually refugees. So what ended up happening, because the Hmong were fighting with the U.S. against the North Vietnamese during the Vietnam War, and they were mostly from Laos, as I said. Now, after the war was over, the Laotian government considered them traitors because they had worked with the U.S., so a lot of them were forced to flee their homeland. So a lot of them went to Thailand, but a lot of them came to the United States as well. So there were a whole bunch, like 30,000 like soldiers fought with the U.S. So they started moving here like after the Vietnam War, like 1975, 1976. Now, there was a pretty high rate of poverty among this particular ethnic group after they moved. But then there also started to be this mysterious thing where they would just die in their sleep. And these, like I said, they were mostly teenage 20s, 30s males. Almost always in perfectly fine physical health, and they would almost inevitably just like die in their sleep for what seemed to be no reason at all.
That's weird, because man, there was always this story. I guess I got it from my dad. I don't know if this is a damn Mississippi story or what. We always assumed that if you died in your sleep, in a dream, that you would die in reality.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But I don't know where that came from, because I've been killed in my dreams and I survived, and I confirmed with my dad that, so we don't know where that story came from. I remember falling off top of a building and I screamed all the way down. You're talking about like a 30-floor drop, and I dreamt it, I fell all 30 stories, hit and then bounced. And I didn't wake up. I woke up during the bounce.
Yeah.
But no, hit and bounced. I was about 15 feet back up into the air during the bounce when I woke up. Most of the time you wake up before you hit the ground.
Yeah, most of the time.
But I didn't on that one. I've also had dreams where people just been machine gunned at close range. Feel the bullets going through me and everything.
Yeah.
And didn't die.
I think that's a pretty common, because I've heard that too, that if you die in your sleep, you die in real life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I always, before I knew about this weird thing, that's kind of where I always thought he got the idea for Nightmare on Elm Street, because I'm like, I thought that was a pretty common misconception that, like, if you died in your sleep, you'd die.
Okay,
Like,
I
you
didn't know
wouldn't
where.
wake up.
I first heard it from my dad, and as soon as he said it was bullshit. I'm going, yeah, it's bullshit. Because the first time
I'm
he
pretty
mentioned
sure
it,
I'd been killed in my dreams too.
yeah,
and,
because when
like,
he
and-
mentioned it, I'd already been killed in my dreams.
Yeah.
I've been grabbed by the back of the neck by a bear and just slung around like a rag doll and feel my head pop off. Or actually felt the body pop off my head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? The bear still had the head. And I saw the body go flying.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And I didn't die.
Yeah.
Of course not, I'm still here.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that'd be pretty weird if you, and I did die.
But I watched
and
it.
he's been a ghost the whole time.
I watched it happen. You know? I remember I got killed in a dream getting trampled by... I was running across a stream and there was a whole herd of horses behind me and I slipped and fell in the stream. And now all those horses trampled me. I just remember looking up in the water and seeing those hooves coming down through the surface of the water, crushing me. Yeah, I could feel them, and I was dead,
Yeah.
dying, getting beat to death, please. Damn, all these hooves, these horses running over me.
It's really weird how realistic dreams get.
Yeah, I thought it was freaking real, man.
Because I've had ones
But
like that.
it doesn't
too.
kill you.
Well, no, obviously.
No. Well, some might say, well, you didn't really die in that dream. You just, you know what I mean?
Well, that
You
just
just-
seems like nitpicking at this point. I mean, if you said you died in your dream, how are they going to prove otherwise?
Yeah.
Really?
I didn't dream that I got killed and then went to heaven in the dream. Maybe that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't
But
know. Either.
no. A lot of times either the dream changes or you wake up. Usually I wake up.
Yeah. Most people do, I think. I think from everybody I've talked to about dreams and shit like that, I do feel like most of the time, if somebody's going to stab you or something like that in your dream, you usually wake up before that happens because it startles you.
Yeah.
But not always. I'm pretty sure I've dreamed that I've been murdered or.
So how'd these guys die? It must have just been...
Well, that's what I mean. So there's this whole weird thing. So there, and like I said, there have been like dozens and dozens of these, like in the late 70s and early 80s.
Maybe they just believed it.
I don't know, but like there was this one guy, he was only 47, perfectly fine mental health, perfectly fine physical health. He was sleeping next to his wife, as you do, and he was like kind of crying in his sleep as if he was having a nightmare, and he also died. And then when they did autopsy, post-mortem, shit like that, and they couldn't find anything wrong. That's what's so weird about this. So they've been trying to figure out, like, what could this be? Like, some people, and this sounds very far-fetched, but it's like, what else are you going to do? Some people have said, well, maybe it was like a chemical nerve agent, but it's just like slow acting or something like that.
They got on the battlefield?
That they got in the battlefield or something. Because like I
Nope.
said, a lot of them were refugees, but you know what I mean? Like, that just seems to be, That's,
I'm fully trained in that shit. Nope.
like I said, and a lot of doctors said, no, that's no way. That's not how nerve agents work. But it's like, they're just grasping at straws to try to find some explanation, because when they have done, autopsies on these men that have died, and they said, if it was something like more like a physical cause or like a chemical cause or something like that, you'd think it would affect the women as well, because they were also there. They were also refugees and everything like that. But it seems to
cultural.
only be checking, and it really seems it does affect other people now and again, but it affects this particular population
Well, is there anything
to
in
a much greater degree.
Is there anything in that culture that allows for this? Like something in there thinking?
There is like a spiritual belief, like some of them have said that because they left Laos, that the spirits of their ancestors were punishing them, like that they had a belief about that.
That's about as hokey as the Mississippi story. If you get killed in your dream, you
That's
die.
what I mean. It's like,
So,
but like I
no.
said, they're really kind of getting to the point where
I bet you it's something biological. Maybe there was something in selective breeding somehow that that racial group in Laos, somehow they didn't inherit some kind of safety mechanism in their brains or something.
Yeah.
To where if they had some kind of a real traumatic shock inside a dream, that it shut down the damn brain.
Yeah.
Some kind of weird collapse.
I mean, and maybe it's just something they don't look, because there is actually, they did actually give this illness a name later on. It's called what?
Go ahead.
It's called SUNS, sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome.
Yeah.
Like I said, it does affect other people, but it disproportionately affects this particular ethnic group.
Okay. Remember when I was in the Army and I had those out-of-body experiences?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what this is.
Except they don't return.
It's a panic type out-of-body experience. And because of maybe they have some religious beliefs that allows them to go exteriorize easily, and then they just tune out. They go off into a higher dimension. And they never came back. Because I told you, I kind of had a feeling like I wanted to gravitate up towards some kind of higher frequency of conscious existence, which would have been kind of like a heaven, kind of like a going away. It didn't happen, though.
Yeah.
But maybe they did.
But you've said to me that you felt like you could have just kept going.
I could have just kept going, but...
And then had you just kept going, then
maybe I would have died.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt like I kind of had like a built-in resistance to doing that.
Yeah.
But maybe they didn't. Maybe because of their religious beliefs.
And the stresses that they had been through.
That now that they were out of body, that they said, fuck it, I can't go back, I'm dead. So
and then they just took off.
So it gave them what they asked for.
Yeah, maybe it's just this one particular, like, perfect storm of factors.
So it had to have been some kind of self-induced out-of-body experience, Because one kid said he was afraid to go to sleep because he would never wake up, right?
He thought he'd be attacked in his sleep and he would never wake up.
Maybe he made that happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
might be self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. He fell asleep, had a dream. The dream was so traumatic that it made an out-of-body experience. He says, I'm dead, just like I thought it was going to happen. I'm dead, I got to go to heaven or whatever. And
that kind of shit bothers me because...
Self-induced,
Well, yeah, and I've read a lot about that kind of stuff, like self-induced illnesses and, people that get, like, fucking stigmata and shit like that, and they think that some people can actually, like, do that just by thinking about it. And it's just, like, that freaks me out because it's like, what if I was just, like, hanging out one day and I accidentally, like, thought something really horrible, and, like, what if I did it to myself?
It's kind of like...
No, that's it. Now I'm worried about that.
Kind of like sometimes if I think I got something in my eye, I might rub it, and I'll feel like there's something in my eye.
There's something in your eye.
And it gets worse and worse,
Yeah.
and there's nothing in your eye.
Yeah.
Okay, so it might have been something like that. They're afraid they're going to die when they go to sleep, and they actually do. They build themselves up. It's almost like a frenzy, you know what I mean? And it's like self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
And then when they die, that happens, and then they have an OBE, and it becomes an NDE and a DE. It goes DE. It goes death experience.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's suggestion is very powerful.
Maybe that's what an animal does when it's under a lot of stress. It just checks out.
Yeah.
His soul just leaves it.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not crazy. It's just, I mean, the weirdest thing about it was that it just disproportionately, like, attacked this particular set of people. Like I said, it does happen to other people occasionally, but it just seems to, like...
They had this thing called, I think it's called Soul, I think is what it was called. And it's something that, veterinarians and people who are into zoologists know about. Game animals like zebras and deer and stuff that, four-legged animals with horns that tend to get eaten, they've noticed that when a bunch of lions have piled on them, lions will start eating them alive.
Yeah.
And if you look at their eyes roll back into their head. They don't even hardly struggle. And evidently they did some kind of test on the EKGs on animals when they were feeding them to lions, and their brainwave activities kind of go flat before they're dead. It's kind of like they put themselves into like a trance. It's like denial. That way they don't have to bear the agony of being eaten alive. It's kind of like...
Well, it's like a defense mechanism.
It's like a defense mechanism.
I mean, it
And
seems
I
like
think it
something
was
that the
called
brain would evolve to do.
Yeah, and I think it's called Soul, I think. It's been a long time since I've heard the term.
And like you said, that might be something similar going on here.
Maybe
where
it's
it's
something
just,
like that. There's some humans can't activate a mode like that where they just check out
Yeah,
to avoid pain of being eaten alive by something.
yeah,
And in most humans, it's vestigial.
yeah,
You know, Laos and Cambodia and all those places. You know what I mean? That's jungle. You know, they're not that lifestyle isn't that far removed from nature. So maybe some of them still have that ability
yeah,
of, you know, tens of thousands of years ago, you could check out if you were getting eaten by a tiger
yeah.
because there's tigers there. And tigers eat humanoid shaped
Oh, yeah.
things. You know, a human's just a big monkey,
Yeah,
especially to a tiger. So maybe their ancestors were still regularly being eaten by tigers or something in the past 5,000
so
years.
they had that.
So they might still have that.
And now when they're put under like
A lot
such like a lot of stress, like the
Yeah.
war, and then like having to being
Yeah.
completely transplanted to an alien culture, and like
Yeah.
things not going well there, and
Then they can just flip the wrong internal switch and then have a fucking near-death experience that they don't ever come back from.
yeah.
They get a death experience. That's the Tom Ross explanation.
Well, it sounds like it's a lot more fucking feasible than late
Yeah,
acting nerve
no,
gas or anything
no,
like
it's
that.
just-
Which, like I said, every medical professional is like, yeah, no, that's not how that works.
Human mind is very powerful, and they don't know much about consciousness. Consciousness is some kind of quantum computation. You know, when they're making these quantum computers, they're trying to make these quantum AI supercomputers,
Yeah,
and that's probably gonna make a difference between digital, because what's happening with a digital computer is just computation. You know what I mean? And computation is not enough to have an emergent property like consciousness. Because if that was the case, it'd be like it was in Terminator. The Skynet would have become conscious. In other words, the internet would be conscious.
yeah,
Because that's a bunch of computation, but it's not conscious. You're going to need something that's not digital. It's going to have to be quantum. There's some, evidently, you know, Stuart Hameroff and all those guys say that the mind and the brain are doing things with those microtubules that kind of look like quantum computation,
yeah,
which that opens up a whole new ball game. So if your brain if those little neurons have those microtubules and each one of them's kind of like a warm temperature quantum processor, that's going to add a whole lot more, you know what I mean, computational ability than just damn zeros and ones and, you know, neurons firing and not firing. So that's probably, it's some, consciousness is very complicated, you know what I mean, and biology can cause it.
yeah.
So I guess biology can cause it to stop too.
Which, like I said, now I'm kind of like worried about it.
Yeah.
Because what if you like think about it too hard?
So you think about it too hard and all of a sudden you think yourself out of your body
Yeah,
and you just vanish.
great. Another thing for me to worry about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's something like that.
well, they can't find another explanation. Like Centers
Yeah.
for Disease Control have been studying this shit. It's like everybody's been studying this shit, and they can't find any obvious physical cause. You know what I mean?
It's going to be something like OBE, out of body experience, and NDE. That's what it's going to be, like astral projection.
Yeah,
They astrally projected out of there and didn't come back.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's just like that's a freaky case. But yeah, in case you guys didn't know, Nightmare on Elm Street, based on that shit, which is
Yeah.
a real thing, and they don't know what causes it. Sleep tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, now we're going to talk about the third case,
Yeah.
which was the base. If you didn't notice, because I said that, oh, Dennis has been awfully quiet on this show.
Yeah, Dan's been quiet. Then I remembered this thing.
Yeah, I just got this. Our friend Lori gave this to me for my birthday.
Yeah.
Like, she's the one that went and saw The Shining
Shining
with
was,
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she knows how much I love Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, it's some Poe action.
Love all
It's
that
the
kind of
Raven,
creepy
yeah.
stuff. And actually, this kind of fits in because,
And it's
when we-
sitting on top of the elements.
yeah,
It was scientifically shit. This is real science shit.
we got all the shit.
Yeah.
But like I said, this actually kind of goes with our last case, The Watcher, because the movie that they made about the Watcher, the killer was named, or the stalker was named The Raven in it. So,
All
yeah.
right.
I didn't even realize until you just put it up there that
Yeah.
that kind of went together. However, the case we are talking about right now is the real and sort of well-known legend, or not really legend because shit did happen. They're just not really entirely sure what did it.
Yeah.
This was the basis of the 2001 movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, among many things. Like I said, it's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. This is the story of the Beast of Gevaudan.
Yeah, it's mysterious shit. You know, I like animals. You know, I hunt and stuff. This involves a hunter guy trying to look for this damn werewolf.
Well, everybody was looking
Yeah,
for this
everybody's
damn
looking for
shit.
it. The king brought this guy on here who was a big badass to go hunt this thing down. It was killing all these people. And if I remember correctly, the story, he does kill it. And then they have it stuffed. But nobody knows what it is.
That I don't know. But,
No, okay.
yeah. Like
That's
I said...
legend, baby.
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
people, as far as I know, people did die. I don't think this is, like, entirely made up or anything
Yeah.
like that. They're just not entirely sure what it was that did it, or, like, if it was just wolves, just, like, regular wolves happening to be...
I don't believe these wolf stories because even wolves in the wild are not aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they were back then, but I don't think so. It's just dogs.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be tough to get a pack of wolves to attack you.
Yeah, I mean, it did happen
Yeah.
in Europe, particularly, you know, in the 15th, 16th century, stuff like that, but not to this extent. I mean,
Yeah.
this seems like quite a lot of people that were attacked in a pretty small, a relatively small area.
The medievals were anti-animal in the extreme. I mean, they just like to kill shit. And they would say, well, we killed it because it was dangerous.
Yeah.
Man, this shit wasn't dangerous. You know what I mean? Fucking bears aren't dangerous. You got bears in the damn backyard.
Yeah.
And they'll run from humans. Mostly wolves will too. So I don't think this was wolves.
Yeah. I have my suspicions about what it might have been, but, you know.
It was either a serial killer or some kind of dangerous foreign animal.
Yeah. So, the story of the Beast of Gevaudan, this is the name given to either a single animal or a bunch of animals, not sure if it was more than one, that happened to kind of terrorize this one province called Gevaudan in south central France in the years 1764 to 1767. Now, this was like not a big area. It was about a 50 square mile area.
1760s?
Yeah.
This is a lot later than I thought it was. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm remembering another case.
Maybe, but I
Because
mean, this
the
is the
case I
most
thought
famous
was-
one.
Okay, case I was thinking of, I thought was the 1500s. 1700s, people knew better.
Yeah.
Or supposedly knew better. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew a lot about animals in the 1700s.
Now, a lot of the descriptions that people gave, because some people did survive and some people did see other people get killed, said that it looked kind of like a wolf or a wolf-dog hybrid, but it was like much bigger than a regular wolf. Now, there were some other descriptions too that kind of maybe could have suggested something else, but, you know.
So a wolf-dog hybrid, but bigger.
Yeah. So a lot of the victims that were found had their throats torn out. Some of them were also partially eaten. The sources differ on how many victims there were. Some sources say that the animals killed between 60 and 100 adults and children and injured about 30, whereas some say they were more than 200 attacks and that 113 people died and 49 people were injured. Of those, about 100 of them were also partially eaten as well.
Over a what period of time now?
3 years.
That's a lot of killing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're
yeah,
saying
that's
that-
why people are still talking about this shit now.
And they're saying this is one animal?
Or a group of animals.
The witnesses are only reporting one, though, at a time?
Yeah.
The ones that
As
lied?
far as I know.
Ones that are alive?
Yeah.
I'm already smelling bullshit. Already smelling bullshit. A pack of animals is hard to hide,
Yeah.
especially aggressive ones. All right. A solitary animal to attack 100 people and kill how many out of the 100? Actually, it killed 100 out of 300. Do y'all remember
Well,
the ratio? was?
210 attacks.
210 attacks
113 deaths.
in 3 years. In 3 years.
Yeah. In this one, like, 50 miles,
In a
50 square
50-mile
mile
radius.
radius.
That's not a dog. That's
No.
not a wolf. You know what I mean? That's something that, if that's one animal doing that, that's a very aggressive animal.
No shit. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's a lot of balls. Most animals won't attack people.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
People
that's
are
why
not
they're
the
still,
normal-
they're still talking about
People
this
are
because
not
it's
the
weird.
normal prey.
Yeah.
So if you could come at me telling me this is a wolf, I'm going to say you're a liar.
Well, I don't know. Some people just said it looked like a wolf because that's the closest thing that they could think of.
Yeah, that's how they're describing it. And they
Yeah.
probably have never been to a zoo. They've never seen a zoology book. It's a four-legged animal with fur on it and teeth. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Kind of dog-shaped. That might be and they're saying it's bigger than a dog.
Yeah. Most of them did say that, yeah.
Some kind of maybe. Would they have recognized a tiger?
Hard to say. In France during that time period?
Yeah, and they said, would they have known what a tiger actually looked like? The average person? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or a hyena?
Now, a couple people at the time did say hyena. So.
How's a hyena going to get there from Africa?
And hyenas don't generally get that big. I mean,
hyenas
are
not
usually
that big, and
only like dog
my
size.
understanding that the females are kind of aggressive, but they're not real aggressive towards human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost kind of like you'd have to train an animal to do this. I don't know, man. I'm thinking there's some kind of misunderstanding.
I don't know.
This has got to be a mixture of a couple different things.
It very well may be.
It's too many people.
Yeah. So the stories around surrounding the Beast of Gevaudan, they think that this actually might be where a lot of commonly seen werewolf tropes come from, because one of the stories is that the hunter that actually eventually ended up killing the beast, because a bunch of wolves and other animals were killed leading up to, but then the attacks kept going.
Kept going, right.
So, the one animal that they killed and then the attacks stopped afterward, he was killed by a hunter named Jean Chastel. The story said that he had actually killed the thing with a bullet that he had forged out of silver. So they think that that's where the silver bullet thing for werewolves might have come from, from descriptions of that. Now, even though, as I said, descriptions of what the beast looked like are kind of varied, in general, they said it looked like a wolf, although some people said it was as big as a calf. Some said it was as big as an elephant. They said it had a dog-like head with small, straight ears that stuck straight up, a little bit like horns. That it had a wide chest. Some people said that it was as wide as a horse's chest. They said it had a really big mouth with really big canine teeth. Now, the only thing that was not wolf-like was they said that the fur was reddish or russet in color.
That's a tiger.
And that it had a black streak on its back, or a black stripe going down its back, which sounds like a hyena, but like I said, hyenas don't usually get that big. Now, the first recorded death was a girl named Jeanne Boulet. She was 14 years old. Many of the victims, it should be noted, were women and children, and a lot of them were shepherds. So they were out in the fields, guarding the sheep or whatever. So she was killed while she was out watching her sleep, as I said, watching her sheep. She was 14 years old. So these killings just kept continuing through 1764. A lot of them women and children, a lot of them shepherds. The killings were so egregious that, even though this was kind of a rural area, they ended up getting a lot of widespread play around France, partly because the media at the time, because the king, Louis XV, at the time was, shit wasn't going so good in France. And so he kind of had a moratorium on printing political stories in the newspaper. So newspapers, to sell copies, were looking for other salacious stories or crazy stories to kind of put out there and get people to buy their papers. So, these series of attacks in this kind of rural area was kind of big news, and it kind of got all over the country at that point. So the stuff starts going on, and it went on for such a long time, and it got to such a big frenzy in the media that a bunch of local aristocrats and officials and stuff like that started to try and go and do something about the problem. So the first time they go out, they actually raise a volunteer army of 30,000 guys. And they kind of went out there to try to look for this thing. They put down poison bait. They even did shit they had some of the soldiers dress up as peasant women, and stand out with sheep and stuff like that, to see if they could lure the beast into attacking them, and shit like that. They put out a big reward. It was a year's salary. and shit like that for anybody that could, anybody could kill it. So, so there were all these stories too about, they think that there might have been, and the reason why it took such hold in the public imagination, I mean, other than it obviously being like a horrifying story, which, everybody loves to read about, sadly enough. But they think because France hadn't been doing very well in the war, they'd had like a lot of setbacks and all this other kind of stuff. So they thought that maybe there was something of, this was something everybody could kind of like rally around, like all the men could go and like, we can go be heroes and we can go kill these animals. And also it was a little bit, it seemed like they were kind of, because a lot of stories came out too where they were kind of like lauding the peasantry, particularly peasants who like fought back against the animals, because some people did, like some peasants like got attacked by the animal, like actually were able to fight it off. There was this one kid named Jacques Portefeuille, and him and some of his little friends were out in a meadow, like with their cattle, and they got attacked by the beast. And it wasn't a pack, it was a single animal. And they actually managed to fend it off, like with their little pikes or whatever. Now, because of that, he ended up getting, him and all his little friends ended up getting like a monetary reward. And that kid ended up actually getting educated at the king's expense, because they were like, he was such a hero for like fighting off the animal. Now there was another little girl, actually, Marie-Jeanne Vallée. She was attacked on August 11th, 1765, and she actually fought the beast off and actually hurt it. And she got called the Maiden of Gevaudan, and they actually made a statue of her, and it is still there in a town in southern France. Now, as I said, even though descriptions varied, most people referred to it as a wolf, but like I said,
That's not wolf behavior.
that's not, yeah, and a lot of people have kind of pointed that out. And like I said, some people described it, and another thing that I forgot to mention too was that it didn't have a wolf-like tail. It had more, people that described its tail said it was kind of like long and thin, more like a lion's tail.
That's what I was thinking. This is a cat.
And at something that I was watching a historian on YouTube who was talking about this case, and he said that it definitely sounded more like cat behavior.
Yeah.
They said because wolves,
They're not stealthy.
well, and
Really.
he's like, when wolves attack, and wolves do attack people,
Okay,
he's
in
like,
a
I'm not
pack.
saying that, but they usually
Yeah.
attack in a pack. They usually just attack with their teeth, not with their claws, and a lot of these victims were clawed like a big cat would do.
Yeah, and this is an ambush, a predator.
Yeah.
Something sneaking up, solitary with stealth. A hyena won't do that. A hyena is another
Yeah.
pack animal. They're not stealthy. They're loud.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? They're loud, and they don't even hide.
right.
You know what I mean? If it was something like a hyena, that fucker would walk right down the middle of a town. They don't
Yeah.
care. They don't have that instinct in them. But not a cat. A cat will skulk around and zero in on
And
prey
jump on you, yeah.
and get in close on it. And it's some kind of a mundane cat that a European at that time couldn't recognize. They said
Or it
had
might
a-
have been a hybrid,
Could
some
be.
type of like unusual
might have
hybrid
been
or something.
might have been like part tiger and part mountain lion.
Yeah,
And they probably would have
possible.
never recognized what that was.
Yeah, because if it was sufficiently weird looking,
Yeah, and kind of reddish with a stripe going down its back.
yeah,
Conceivably, that maybe if you took something like a mountain lion and a tiger and bred it, or a lion and a lion. They knew what lions were.
yeah,
Maybe you take a lion and a mountain lion and crossbreed it, because you know you can have ligers and tigerons and stuff. There weren't many of these big cats in captivity in Europe at that time.
they were in menageries and stuff.
Yeah.
Like wealthy people had them. That was kind of a thing back
So it
then.
might be something where a wealthy person has a damn mountain lion that came from the New World, and they cross it with an African cat, because that's what they have,
Yeah,
and that's what comes out.
it's like he's a cat, you're a cat. Get in there.
And then some kind of weird offspring, and it gets out.
Yeah,
You know, it's going to be something like that.
and even at the time that all of this was going on, a few people did make that they thought that it wasn't, maybe not straight up a lion, but that it was something else crossed with a lion.
Yeah, and whoever did it, it got out of some rich guy's collection.
That's what I'm thinking.
And
because
he's not
that
going to
was-
fess up because there's 200 people dead or 100 people dead.
Right.
He's gonna go, I don't know.
Would never
Yeah.
do such a thing. I
And-
wouldn't keep such large, dangerous animals. No, no
Yeah,
way.
and something like that could survive on extended periods eating people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that's
I kind of
that's
feel
close to its prey.
Yeah.
Close to in size to what it would eat.
And I mean, if like some poor little woman or kid is just standing out there
Yeah.
with their cattle or their sheep or whatever, and that big old kitty like skulks by and is like, "Oh, that looks delicious right there."
In that situation back then, it might have been easier to go after people than damn flocks of sheep,
Yeah.
because the flocks might have been better guarded by dogs and stuff than the little girl was.
Well, yeah,
So
obviously.
you know what I mean. The cat jumps on that little girl, tries to drag her off.
Yeah. And
that-
did in some cases.
Yeah,
And
and they're
partially.
sufficiently stealthy enough to kind of evade detection for 3 years. Yeah, they could do that.
That's what I was thinking. And like when I was watching this historian that was talking about it, you know, he's like, obviously we don't know what it is nowadays, but he seemed to lean toward the same thing. He's
It's
like,
cat.
he thought it was maybe a juvenile lion. He's like, because he's like, maybe peasants would recognize a lion with a mane.
with a mane, but not.
But if it didn't have a mane, or if it
Yeah.
had been crossbred with something else, then they might not immediately recognize,
It's
because
gonna
it
be-
wouldn't be an animal you would recognize.
it's going to be something that if a modern person saw it, you'd know what it was.
Yeah. I mean, because it had to be something, because all these
Yeah.
fucking people died.
Right.
I don't think this was, you know, yeah, it might have been exaggerated, because as the story went on, because it was such a media sensation, you know, obviously crazy details got added later on, like, oh, the
Yeah.
animal could walk on its hind feet, and it's like, we shot it and nothing happened, like, it could repel bullets, and like, it had fire eyes and shit like that.
Two of the things in the description kind of stood out to me: that it had a broad chest,
Yeah.
and that it was about the size of a calf.
And they also said that it leaped.
That it
Like,
leaped.
that it could leap really
Well, do you
far.
know what has a
Which
broad
sounds
chest?
cat-like.
No, it has
What's
a
that?
broad chest. A mountain lion.
Yeah.
Mountain lions are kind of short and stocky as far as cats go. They don't have real long legs.
Yeah.
So they kind of have especially when they're young, so they kind of have that broad chest, almost a human-sized chest on them, really, with kind of like short legs, almost like a Dachshund.
Yeah.
You know, but they have a cat head. But they don't have a mane, so maybe a person who doesn't never seen a mountain lion might not recognize that as a lion because it doesn't have a mane.
Yeah.
And they're describing that same tail. And a mountain lion does kind of have ears like that.
Yeah.
Kind of stick up.
And
That's
another
what they're talking about.
And another thing that I was thinking too is that, and you see this nowadays with, like I said, with the lion and tiger hybrids, that they tend to be much larger than either
Yeah.
lions or tigers.
It might have just been a straight up mountain lion because this is the 1760s.
Yeah.
There were all kinds of mountain lions in the United States trapped and sold and stuff, you know. And it's only a matter of time before somebody's going to sell one to a European noble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From the New World. You know, you could get mountain lions from the United States.
Well, yeah, of course, you could get pretty
You could
much
get
anything.
You
back
could get
then.
a buffalo.
I mean, if you were rich enough.
Yeah, if you're rich enough, you can get anything.
And they just love all that exotic
You get
shit.
big
Like,
back-
yeah, ship me one of those.
Give me one of them American bison. You know what I mean? They could do that back
Yeah.
then. It's just that the peasants, regular people, wouldn't know
Well, yeah,
what a
you would
mountain
never
lion
see
was.
that. You
Right.
don't see them like in your day-to-day life. It's not like they have the fucking internet or even
I think
photography.
it's what it was. I think it was a puma.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
very possible. And like I said, this guy I was talking to, he seemed to lean toward that too. He's like, I think it was some kind of big cat.
I
Either
think
some
a-
kind of hybrid cat or
Yeah.
just like a big
I think
cat.
a
that they would
puma and a
recognize.
mountain lion is the same thing. I think it's just different title for the same basic thing.
Yeah.
I think it's interchangeable. I mean, we're gonna call, you know, here in the United States, we're gonna look at something like that called a mountain lion.
Yeah.
I think a puma is the same though. That might be a Central American version of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There might
But
be slight differences.
There might be a
but
slight difference, but that's what they're
I couldn't
talking
tell you
about.
what they were.
Something like a puma.
Yeah. But so, as I said, the killings continue. So they keep sending like bands of, you know, you get like all these hunters like, I've killed 1,200 wolves. I'm going to go out there and get it. Because like I said, there was a massive reward. So September 1765 rather, you know, a couple big game hunters went out there and actually shot and killed a very large wolf, sent the body to Versailles, got a reward from King Louis XV. And as far as the royalty was concerned, that was the end of the matter. Yep, that was it. All over. Except 2 months later, attacks started again. And then for the next 18 months, There were around 30 to 35 more fatalities during that time period. But since the king had already paid out the reward and already said, hey, we already got this big giant wolf that it was, they're just like, too bad, so sad, we're not going to help you anymore because this must be some other shit and we don't want to get involved.
It makes sense that it was a puma or a mountain lion because in that place in time, there weren't very many wild animals. All your animals were in some kind of damn herd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they would have been. So a puma would have been in a jam because they're not in the environment it's supposed to be in. It wouldn't have any choice but to go after little kids.
Yeah.
That's what it would do.
But so since they weren't getting any help from the king anymore, the locals started banding together and decided to send out their own hunting parties and shit like that. So Jean Chastel, who, as I said, was the guy that's like credited with killing the Beast of Gevaudan, even though, whatever. He actually got out there and using, reportedly, a silver bullet, he shot another very large wolf. Now, even though I suspect that this was not the beast, the attacks did stop after this particular animal was killed. So everyone thought, oh, well, that guy got it. And he is the guy that's credited with killing the Beast of Gevaudan, even though, like I said, I very much doubt that it was a wolf.
So they never recovered a body.
So as far as I know, because there's still debate about what that animal was, I mean, people assumed at the time, oh, well, because this big wolf he shot and then the attack stopped after that, like after the 3 years. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, coincidentally, the animal could have died elsewhere.
Died on its own.
God died on its own.
Maybe it only lasted 3 years because it wasn't in his natural habitat.
Yeah.
And it just slowly starved to death. It wasn't getting enough food. Or, it got stuck in something and died, ran up something. Ran down in a damn drainage pipe and never was, couldn't get back out. There's all kinds of stuff. It was in a place where it didn't belong.
Yeah.
And it didn't have its normal food. And had it been raised in captivity, it wouldn't have very many survival skills. And maybe it didn't do real well in the European winters. There's all kinds of factors.
That's what I mean. I kind of suspect. So, like I said, to this day, there's still a lot of, some people said, oh, it was like, some people that point to, like, maybe it was a wolf or wolves, like, larger than average, said, there were a lot of wolf attacks in other parts of France, like, during this period. From the 16th century to the 19th century, wolves killed about 9,000 people in France. So
wolves killed 9,000 people.
Yeah.
What kind of wolves are they dealing with?
Very angry and hungry ones.
What kind of people letting themselves get attacked by dogs? I would fucking.
I mean, you have to think that's
They're
over.
Dogs.
That's over like 300 years.
Oh, about 300 years.
That's about 300 years. I mean, still a lot, but it's a 300-year.
They got to be picking off a week.
An entire country. Well, that's what this one particular thing was doing.
Yeah.
However, most modern scholars tend to believe that it was a lion that escaped from a menagerie or some kind of...
It was a big cat.
Some kind of unusual hybrid of a cat. There were even... This is very funny, but there were actually rumors that Jean Chastel, the guy that ended up killing, quote-unquote, the Beast of Gevaudan, that it was his animal and he had actually trained it to kill people so he could go out there and be a badass and like fucking kill it and stuff, which seems a tad far-fetched.
Yeah, far-fetched. And if he could do that once and make money, then he'd do it regularly. He would be appearing at all these fucking different sites of where animals are attacking people. Besides, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't train an animal to attack people, let it go and then reclaim it later.
Yeah,
once that thing's gone, it's doing its own thing.
I'm just saying that seems like an inevitable story that's gonna come up about that. And it's like there were even stories that because, like I said, since shit got exaggerated later on, and some people said, "Oh, I shot it and it didn't kill it," and some people said though that somebody owned it and it was wearing like some kind of armor, like boar skin or something like that. Yeah. Which, like I said, it seems a little.
Guarantee you, this is a North American mountain lion or some kind of Central South American puma. You had guys in Portugal and Spain that were already tied up with colonies going all down Central and South America. That thing could have come from anywhere. It could have been a jaguar.
Yeah.
Now
there was a show.
Something like that.
There was a show in 2009 on the History Channel, and it was called The Real Wolfman. I guess it was one of those like real life monster shows. And they put forth the theory that it might have been a striped hyena, which is a long-haired hyena. They're extinct now. And I guess they're bigger than other regular hyenas. So they're speculating that maybe it was that, or maybe it was some other like holdover that are
Yeah.
extinct now, or there wasn't that many of them left in the wild.
The more I think of it, the more I'm gonna say it's a cat. It's a cat.
I kind of feel like it's a cat too. Mostly just from the tail and the way that they said. A lot of them said that it jumped, like that it could jump really far.
Yeah.
Which not so much a wolf thing.
Hyenas are dog-like pack hunters.
Yeah.
They're not stealthy.
Yeah.
And they don't hunt that way.
Yeah.
And they kind of hunt the way a dog does. They just walk around until they see something, and then they start yelling at it and chasing it. And, they're just not. They usually have to get a kill. They usually have to be working in a big pack as a team. They're not an effective solitary.
Well, yeah, because they have to kind of like.
Yeah,
they use their little friends to kind of get them all in.
They're not skilled.
Location.
They're not skilled solitary hunters. Not like a cat.
Yeah.
A cat can go out on its own and regularly feed itself. And this one evidently was for 3 years. But when animals fail, they don't fail all at once. They fail slowly over a period of years because each year they just can't quite get the same amount of calories that they had the year before. So they get a little weaker each year. And then eventually they just can't make it anymore.
Well, and the thing, too, is that if this was indeed a lion or another kind of hybrid cat that had escaped from a menagerie, then it wouldn't have had any other animals in the vicinity to mate with or anything like that. So it would have been all alone, which usually isn't a huge problem for particular types of cats, but
in the
its line won't continue.
1760s, France was all just a bunch of farms.
Yeah.
So, it would have been forced to feed off of those farms.
Yeah.
And, if they couldn't get at the animals, they'd get at the children. And it was probably getting the animals, too. But that was getting blamed on wolves and
or foxes
and other stuff.
Like that,
so it wasn't being attributed to this beast. It just went after whatever it could get, and if it was people, then it would do that too.
Yeah.
But like I said, some people drove it off, and that checks out with a big cat also, something like a puma or a mountain lion. You're not talking about something huge like a tiger. It's fierce. A couple little kids with sticks could drive that off.
Well, yeah,
Something
because
like
it would be like,
they're
too much trouble. It's not worth it to eat those
They
kids.
just leave.
Fucking kids.
Because predators don't want to get hurt. Even a minor injury could end your life.
Well, yeah, because they'll starve.
You'll starve. You can't eat. So that's what it was. I'm just going to come out and say Tom Ross has solved this. This was some kind of fucking mountain lion.
Yeah.
Mountain lion.
Well, like I said, you're not alone in that assertion.
It was a New World cat, not African. I bet it was something.
Something that wouldn't have been immediately recognized.
Yeah, they probably would have recognized the African stuff, but I think stuff from the Americas they probably would have
been more exotic.
More exotic to them.
And like I said, could have been a hybrid too. So it wasn't.
Could have been, but unlikely. I think more likely that it was just a straight up mountain lion.
Yeah.
Something that if we saw it, we go, oh yeah. You know what I mean?
As it's jumping on.
Yeah, I know exactly what that is. Well, I don't know if they should look at this exotic animal. We look at it because we talking about, man, it's a fucking mountain lion.
True, but yeah. So like I said, there's been tons of there's other movies made about this one too, but like I said, probably the best known one is Brotherhood of the Wolf is really good. Now in the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, the beast is actually a lion, but it has armor on.
Yeah. Okay.
Like somebody's using it to go out because it's a movie, but it is a lion in the movie.
Yeah.
So like I said, you're not the
That's
only
what
person
it was in
to
real
think
life.
that. It probably was. So like I said, a lot of people have said that. All right, so we've gotten more than past the halfway point, probably. Yeah. So we are going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we will do 2 more cases, which are both very fascinating. We will be talking about the case behind The Hills Have Eyes, and also the case behind The Watcher.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of excited about talking about that one, because this is a weird fucking case.
Yeah.
All right, so we will be back in just a few minutes. You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. Featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carrie Babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident, The Faceless Villain Volume 3 is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999. Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com, and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history.
What's up, pretty princess? Yeah, you are so fluffy. You are so fluffy and pretty, yes you are. You look all prim and proper. Yeah, yeah. Where did Pookie go? There's Pookie. Hey. Hi, baby girl. Yeah? You gonna go hang out with Beijing? You gonna go hang out with Beijing? You're just kind of looking at each other like, eh. Look at him just chilling out. This is really good because when we first got baby Cookie, Beijing was not happy about it.
Yeah.
And she was always hissing at her and beating up on her and stuff. But it looks like they've come to a grudging acceptance now. They kind of like hang out too. She still hisses at her sometimes if she gets into...
She tries to keep her in line.
Yeah. But, you know. Oh, goodness. Look at her rolling. You rolling, Pookie.
Conspiranormal Podcast proudly presents the Strange Realities Conference. Strange Realities. Come join us for one day of presentations on the paranormal with live music at night featuring Tim Banal,
The Rise and Fall of the Flat Earth Theory,
Joshua Cutchin,
Alien Hybrid Lore,
Joe Damari,
Pushing the Limits of Reality,
Guy Malone,
Roswell 1947, What Really Happened,
Timothy Renner,
Pennsylvania Wildman,
and added to the lineup, Mark Anthony Wyatt,
Cornish Legends and UFO Sightings,
Zach Hunt.
presentation of his book Unraptured,
Followed by a live recording of the Conspiranormal Podcast. More speakers and music acts to be announced. October 19, 2019, SIR Nashville.
Tickets and info at www.strangerealitiesconference.com. $40 at the door, $30 pre-sale.
All right, we are back from the break.
Yeah, you know what I did? During that break, I went and I looked at the difference between a mountain lion, a cougar, and a puma. It's all the same animal.
They all the same.
It's all the same animal. It's all North American mountain lion.
And now that we're looking at pictures
I
of
looked
them,
at him and that looks like a dog.
they do have big, like pointy, straight up ears, and they do have a little bit of a doggy looking face.
Yeah, it's from certain angles, especially
From
when,
certain
it's,
angles,
when it's
yeah.
looking straight at you. And it got a wide chest and that tail, and they are kind of reddish, especially they change color throughout the year, and they do have black highlights on them. But I could understand how a European in the 1700s who maybe never seen one might not associate it with a lion.
Well, and some people have pointed out that juvenile lions actually do have black spots sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Did it say it had black spots?
Well, they usually said it had black markings on its back, like a black stripe, or it had that it was mostly red, but it had like some black
mountain lions had that too.
on it. Yeah.
And they have
That's what I'm saying. So
black and white highlights in the ears and in the face. That's that's a mountain lion that they saw.
Yeah, probably.
Guarantee you somebody from the colonies sent it. They got in some rich guy's collection, and it got out when it started eating people. He kept his mouth shut.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be held responsible for it.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Got that shit solved.
All right, so the next case that we wanted to talk about is the case that was the inspiration for the Wes Craven film The Hills Have Eyes.
That's a good movie.
Now, as most people know, The Hills Have Eyes, about a kind of clan of backwoods savages, inbred
up in the desert
stuff, and they kind of live in caves and ambush people and cannibals and stuff like that. Well, this was actually based on a real thing, although there is still debate over how much of this story is exaggerated, how much of it is legend. Maybe it never happened, maybe it did happen, but not to the extent that the folklore has gone on to thing. But, I'm not taking a stand on that either way. This is the story of Sawney Bean and his cannibal clan. Now, this happened in 16th century Scotland.
Okay.
Alexander Sawney Bean was said to be the head of a 45-person clan. They were all his relatives, which we'll get into, who lived in a cave and are said to have killed and eaten over 1,000 people.
They like that long pig.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Delicious.
I guess so.
Now,
Well, it's probably easier than raising animals.
Well, particularly when you live in a cave
Yeah.
with 44 other people. So, Now, the story of Sawney Bean first appears in something called the Newgate Calendar, which was like kind of a true crime kind of catalog from Newgate Prison in London. Now, like I said, there's still some debate over how much of this story is true or false or whatever, but in Edinburgh nowadays, and in Scotland, it is, widely known folklore. You can even go to the supposed Sawney Bean cave. It's like a tourist destination and shit like that. So, now, according to this story that was in the Newgate Calendar, Alexander Bean, who would later become known as Sawney for reasons that have been lost to history, was born in a place called East Lothian during the 16th century. His father was a hedge trimmer and ditch digger. And Alexander was at first going to go into the family business, but then he decided that working for a living was just not for him. So he decides to leave town and go out and find his own fortune, I suppose. Now, story goes that he left with this woman named Agnes Douglas, also known as Black Agnes, because she was thought to be a witch. So the two of them start robbing people. Become highwaymen, essentially. Just like ambushing people in the street. Now, or in the road, whatever. They didn't have streets really back then. So they supposedly rob and eat one victim, and then they move into this cave at this place called Benane Head. And any Scottish people, I'm really sorry if I'm like butchering these names. So they supposedly lived in this cave, which was 200 yards deep. And the entrance of it, like when the water came up at high tide, like you couldn't see the entrance of it. So they were kind of like well hidden, like when the tide was high. They supposedly lived in this cave for 25 years. During this 25 years, they produced 6 daughters and 8 sons. And subsequently, 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters. So, there was a lot of incest.
A lot of inbreeding
going on in this cave.
Yeah.
Which, like I said. So this whole entire family, if you want to call it that, how they made their living was they would ambush. They would only come out at night. They didn't come out during the daytime. So the villagers around there were not super aware of what was going on. Like, they knew people would go missing and, like, you would get attacked in the road and shit like that if you went out at night. But they didn't know that there was, like, a whole clan of fucking cannibalistic serial killers living in this fucking cave because they never came out in the daytime. So they would ambush anyone that was, like, going down the road at night, take all their shit, and then they would kill them, bring the bodies back to the cave, and then dismember them and eat them. Now, anytime there were leftovers because, leftovers you need to take to work the next day. But so they would pickle those parts. Now, story goes that they would also take some of the parts that they didn't want, and they would, like, throw them out of the water, so they would wash up on the beach so that people that went missing, like, people would think that animals had attacked them and shit like that, because they were trying to keep on the DL, as you would.
And this story's coming from where?
It was, like 1500s? I said, it was 16th
16th
century.
That's 1500s.
Yeah, and it first appeared, like I said, it was the Newgate prison, like, they had, like, a
and
newspaper, a thing.
Had all these details in the original story?
Yeah, as far as I know.
About the body parts washing up and everything?
Yeah.
Because it's sounding plausible.
As far as I know.
It's sounding plausible so far. Because usually if there's some kind of wild tale of the 1500s, from the 1500s, there have already been a bunch of inconsistencies in it.
Yeah.
And this one here...
It's not crazy. It's
not sounding so crazy.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to eat all the body parts.
Yeah.
You're not going to waste your time burying them. You're just going to throw them out in the water, let the fish get them.
Yeah.
But it washes back up.
Yeah, bones and shit.
And people see it.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
And then this is before police stations and modern investigative techniques and modern investigation. You know what I mean? You could, in the 1500s, you could probably get away with that for a long time if you didn't know where, you know what I mean? Had that cave not been found.
Yeah.
And those people not identified.
Well, like I said, they
could
were
probably
doing
get away with it for a long
years.
time. Yeah. 25 years isn't a very long time under those technological,
right.
Under that technological level that they had back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you couldn't do this.
Well, yeah, no.
No, one person comes up missing, they immediately try to backtrack and figure out where this person vanished.
Yeah.
And if they start seeing a consistent pattern, they're like, something's in this area is killing these people. They'd find that cave eventually.
Yeah.
With using modern investigative techniques, but not in the 1500s. They probably had a hard time keeping track of the people that vanished.
Yeah.
No centralized place where they wrote all that down and stored that information.
And maybe some of the people were like travelers or like transient through like various villages and stuff, and no one knew them. Like,
people got vanished all the time by highwaymen and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why it was so prevalent back then, because there was like not a lot of ways to check.
Yeah, this kind of reminded me of stories of kind of like those Indian guys, Thugis.
Yeah.
Kind of like Thugi cults. Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, so eventually so many disappearances were happening in this area that like a lot of the local villagers were like, man, we got to do something about this. So they started like putting together, little search parties and everything like that. So
like
they
little
were
posses, yeah.
Yeah, so they were going to go around and see what the fuck was going on. Now, they did actually kind of see the cave entrance, but they didn't really think to look in there because they thought it would look too small and they didn't think any humans would live in there or anything like that. They did see it, but they didn't go in there at the time.
So the entrance of it was kind of small.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, you couldn't really see it when the tide was high because it was kind of like covered up.
It was on the bank and the water would
well, it's kind of like, it looked like I'm not sure if like the one that is in the legend that I saw in the picture, but it looked like it was kind of like on a little bit of a cliff face type of deal.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it didn't look very big.
All right.
I mean, you know what I mean? So it's just that, they did note that it was there. It's like, oh, there's like a little cave entrance, but I don't think anybody could live in there. So they didn't really like search it to any great degree. Now, during this time period, as would normally happen, there was like a lot of panic. Some people were lynched that later turned out to be innocent people. And, and disappearances like continued apace. So obviously they weren't getting the people that were really doing it. Some people even thought that some guys that kept inns in the area, like that maybe they were doing it because
that was
like
kind of a common
because
thing,
that's like the last time the people were seen were at this
in
particular
the
inn, and then they disappeared. So they said maybe they're knocking them off for their money, like stealing all their shit and then like burying them in the backyard.
That would happen.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So there was like a lot of widespread like belief that maybe that was going on. Now it so happened that so the story goes that there was a married couple, and they were riding on one horse, and they were coming back from like a fair that had been in the area, and they were set upon by some of the Sawney Bean clan. Now the clan ended up killing the wife, but the husband was able to fight them off. And at this stage, there was still like the fair wasn't that far in the background. They hadn't gone that far. So a bunch of other people that had been at the fair like came to the guy's aid and kind of chased the clan a little bit down the trail. So then they kind of knew what type of thing they were dealing with. They were on foot when they got
attacked, or they were in a carriage?
On a horse. They were on a
horse.
Yeah.
And the clan attacked them just barehanded, or they had weapons? Did it say?
I don't know, really. I don't know.
Must have been kind of barehanded.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
So, now that they had like a guy that had survived an attack, word gets back to the king, and they decide that they're going to go out there, and they get like a bunch of bloodhounds, and they're going to find out where these people are coming from. So the bloodhounds actually found the cave, as bloodhounds do.
I wonder how they tracked them down. They must have given some kind of sample to the dogs. Maybe something was dropped, left behind.
Well, like I said, that guy got attacked and his wife got killed by them.
Yeah, but they had to have like some clothing or something off these
Yeah.
people.
Well, probably they took some of the wife's clothing or some shit like that, because I don't think they took the wife's body because so many people came and like chased them off.
Maybe they tracked the wife.
So they tracked.
Wife's scent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
So, so the bloodhounds apparently found the cave. So the group that had gone to look for them, they go in the cave and find all of these people in there, the Sawney Bean clan, and then there's all kind of body parts in there. There's like pieces hanging from the walls. There's like fucking barrels with severed limbs in there. There's all kind of stolen shit. So it's like, it's hard to see. You walk into the cave and there's like, it's not what it looks like, I promise. It's like you're kind of caught red-handed.
There's 40 of them in there?
Yeah, I think 45 is how the story goes. There's 45 of them living in this cave.
Damn.
Yeah.
So
with a bunch of yucky, like, severed body parts. So I'm sure that smelled fantastic.
Yeah.
Now...
Well, I guess they were eating it.
Yeah. Now, there are two different versions of what happened then. The most common is that the clan were all captured alive, that they didn't fight the authorities or anything like that. So they actually took them all alive. They chained them all up. They took them to Tolbooth Jail in Edinburgh, then transferred them. Some sources say Leith, some say Glasgow. And they didn't get a trial because apparently the judge or whoever determined these things thought they were subhuman and that they did not merit a trial. Right. So they were pretty much just executed right
on
away.
The spot. Yeah.
Now, Sawney Bean and all the other men in the clan reportedly had all of their genitalia cut off and then thrown into the fire while they were still alive.
Yeah.
They had their hands and feet severed and were allowed to bleed out.
Yeah.
Because they wanted them to suffer.
They did that kind of shit in the 1500s, man.
Yeah.
You didn't fuck around back then, man. They'd break you on the wheel and stuff.
Yeah.
Or they had, they were just like, fuck you, you're evil, we're going to cut your nuts off. And that's how they did it.
Yep.
That's how they rolled back then.
And all the female members of the clan, they made them watch them do that to the men, and then they burned them all at the stake.
Yeah.
The children also, because some of the members of the clan were still kids.
Yeah.
There's also another version, and I've heard these two versions combined. Some of the versions say, too, that they put gunpowder, in the cave entrance, and then, just suffocated them all in there. Although I've also heard that they actually just blew up the cave. After, you know what I mean?
Sounds more likely that they had brought them back and done all that torture to them.
That's the most common.
That's what.
Story.
Yeah, because in the other cases where they got serial killers and stuff, that's usually what they did to them.
Yeah, so yeah. I'm kind of thinking that's what they would do if they caught this big fucking thing.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, there's some dispute over how much of this story is true. It should be noted that there are a couple of older stories that are kind of similar. There's one called Christy Cleek. That there's a story called that, and that actually came out. That was supposed to have happened in 1459, and that was there was a thief and his wife and kids, and they lived in a cave. And they, would capture people and eat them. And when they were caught, because I think they all got executed, the daughter, they actually left her alive. She was 12 years old. And they asked her what the deal was, why her family would do that. And she said, I tell you, this is a quote, I tell you that if you did but know how pleasant the taste of man's flesh was, none of you all would forbear to eat it. Saying humans are so fucking delicious that you would do the same thing.
Maybe that was the only meat she knew about, though.
Maybe. I wouldn't know. I've never eaten human. But
that's probably the only meat they ever had.
Yeah. So some people are thinking that maybe the Sawney Bean tale is just maybe a retelling of this. Maybe it's an urban legend.
Doesn't sound so.
And, some have said that, maybe it was anti-Scots propaganda. But then some people pointed out, they're well, it appeared in the Newgate calendar, which also had shit about English criminals in there, too. So it wasn't like the English just picking on the Scots, which they did do. Yeah. But... it's if they just wanted to pick on the Scots, then, they would have just...
Well, there were lots of stories that are like this, that sound just like this, that I'm pretty sure it was going on.
Yeah.
I think it was in the 14 or 1500s. Had the guy who thought he was a werewolf going around eating every girl he saw.
Yeah.
And the way he would describe it and everything, he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he was living with his sister in an old abandoned house, forgotten out in the damn forest. And they had kids together. And that court kind of came to that same conclusion that these are subhumans.
Yeah.
I think if you were badly inbred, they just killed you. Which that probably, because that's what they did, I think, to his kids too.
Yeah.
They were like, wait a minute, they're brother and sister, and then they got, where'd these kids come from,
Yeah.
So when they passed judgment on them, there wasn't, like you said, I don't even think there was a trial. They just kind of passed judgment.
Yeah.
But he confessed. They confessed to so much stuff in that case. That's probably the same thing they do here. They'd find all these people, cannibalizing other people and all this stolen property and body parts and all this inbreeding. They're going to go, no, fuck this. And then
I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear it.
These are demons. Yeah, these aren't even humans, just...
Because like I said, you started with Sawney Bean and Black Agnes, his wife, and suddenly there's 45 of them in there. So like I said, you do the math.
Yeah,
how much incest was happening.
Yeah, 1500s, it was another time. They didn't play. They didn't
Well,
play.
they most definitely did
They
not.
did not
and
play.
they did not in this situation.
Yeah, they didn't play.
Whether this story is completely true or not, or whether it's exaggerated, or whether it's, like a newer version of an older story, because like I said, there are a couple other older stories that are very similar to this. But as I said, it is very, very well known folklore, legend, history in Scotland, and you can still do like a tour where they like show you some of the supposed locations where the cave was and all this other kind of stuff. So
There's too many other stories about mass robbery, mass murder, and cannibalism in the olden days, going all the way up into the 1800s. There was
it was
too much.
kind of common,
that
wasn't
shit was
it?
going on. So it's not just based on wild rumors.
Yeah.
That was happening.
Yeah. Like I
was
said,
happening.
did they kill and eat 1,000 people? I don't know, but it's like I don't think it's that far fetched.
You got 40 people in there.
There was a
eating-
bunch of them in a cave, robbing and eating people.
You said there were
Why wouldn't they?
45 people in there, or ultimately 45 because they all had to be born.
Yeah.
But they're in there eating regularly over 25 years. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's not
I
like
could see 1,000 people.
how are you going to catch that many rabbits for
Yeah.
that many people?
So
I'm
much
just
easier.
saying.
Yeah, and you see that's like a one-stop shop for them.
Well, yeah, we got
You
all the
don't-
money and
the
meat.
money, the clothing, everything you need to survive, and the meat,
Yeah.
all just from robbing these
Yeah, and that's
travelers.
like all they had to do. They
That's
just
all
went
they
out
had
at
to do.
night, you jumped on a few
You didn't.
people,
You wouldn't even have to go trade, or you wouldn't even worry about money. So yeah,
yeah, and like I said, that was like the whole
it sounds
the
like
whole
that.
story. Sawney Bean didn't want to have to get a real job. quote
I mean,
unquote.
weird shit happens today. You don't think even weirder shit happened in the
It
1500s?
really seemed to be like a lot.
Yeah,
weirder back
I'm
then.
sure it was
Yeah,
even
I know
weirder.
shit's exaggerated and stuff, but some crazy fucking shit went on back then.
Even a
seriously.
civilized person of the 1500s really wasn't all that civilized
Exactly.
by our
Yeah,
standards.
they
you
would
know?
do some shit that would fucking turn your hair white, man.
Hell yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it was a different time.
They turned.
altogether.
They got mad at people. They damn tie a rope around their ankles and suspend them upside down. Get two dudes to take a saw and start sawing
Yeah.
a living person from the crotch all the way down into your. And they said that they would stop and take a break
Yeah.
when they got about halfway through. And these people were alive when
Well,
all this.
yeah, you could technically still
They
be
were-
alive.
Yeah. Yeah, they were fucking cruel.
Yeah.
But that's just the way they saw things.
Well-
that's how they consider that justice. You know what I mean?
and
You're
we've talked about it.
making people suffer for the evil that they've done.
We've talked about it before too. It's like the idea that like every life is precious or like every
yeah,
that is really a rather modern
That's a new-
concept.
that's a new
That's
thing.
a
No.
modern concept.
Now, back in those days, if you did something wrong, they were going to make you suffer.
Yeah.
And then they'd rationalize it. Every people rationalized it. The Aztecs, the English, and everything. Well, if Jesus suffered and he was our savior, you know what I mean? You're going to suffer even worse.
Yeah.
If it was good enough for Jesus, this shit's going to be good enough for
Yeah.
you.
So no whining.
So
We're just gonna cut you right in
Yeah.
half.
So their interpretation of things was, very different than a modern interpretation. That's why it's the same kind of forces that cause people to throw their children into cenotes to rain gods and cut people's hearts out, and people walk to the top of a temple willingly to get their heart cut out.
Yeah.
Because that was their religious duty. Religious warfare and stuff.
Yeah. People do all kind of crazy shit.
Yeah. So you just world was the way it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think about from a modern sensibility because
Yeah.
it just seems like most people nowadays just wouldn't even imagine doing anything like that. But
This is the fucking planet of the apes. Literally. Hey, we're the apes.
so yeah, I just like I said,
Mean.
it's like this could be like a legend or exaggerated or something, but
I
it
don't
would
think so.
would not surprise me if it hadn't happened
Yeah.
exactly like they said. It's like
It's probably-
there's nothing crazy about that.
Yeah, it probably happened just like they
Nothing
said it
at all.
happened.
Nope.
I mean, well, look what royalty would and nobility would do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You had Bathory,
Yeah.
and you'd have Vlad Tepes.
Yeah. It's like
Your
even though I
Vlad
think some of
Impaler.
that was exaggerated, probably like the numbers might have been exaggerated, but they did do a lot of the shit that
Yeah.
you know.
Well, what's funny is that you look at Vlad the Impaler, and he's kind of held up as like some kind of demonic villain, when in his place and time he was held up as a hero.
Well, he still is a
He
hero.
still
in
is
that
a
part of the
hero,
world.
yeah, because he defended Wallachia,
Yeah.
and that was their ethos of the time was that you're good to your friends and you're ruthless to your enemies, and then impaling people sets an example. If you come in here, you're gonna fucking pay.
Yeah.
And that works. In a world without law and order, that actually works.
Yeah.
You can't go in there being nice to these people. They'll come back and kill you.
Yeah.
Like some out of Walking Dead. First few seasons of Walking Dead, back when Walking Dead was good. Some in the medieval period, in the Renaissance period, even really in some places today, a lot of people only understand force. You got to rule them by terror. If not, they kill you. Go down to Mexico, go try to make friends with them damn drug cartels. Watch what happens. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
But yeah, so the tale of Sawney Bean, as I said, was the basis for The Hills Have Eyes. This was the second one that Wes Craven got the idea, because he did Nightmare on Elm Street too, and he got the whole Cambodian sleeping death thing. But yeah, he used that as the basis for The Hills Have Eyes. And pretty much any movie that's kind of like about a bunch of inbred cannibals, I think, can kind of like look back at this case, because it's pretty famous, particularly in Scotland. But I've heard a lot about it.
That'd make a good movie.
I don't know if they've made a movie about that specific case. They may have.
I'll make a movie about that, set it in the 1500s and everything.
That would be actually kind of good. I'm surprised no one's really done that.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, like I said, most of those was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff.
It'd be like Bone Tomahawk.
It would be kind of like that, yeah. Maybe Bone Tomahawk was kind of based on that shit too, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. But yeah, so Hills Have Eyes. If you haven't seen it, it's based on this. All right, now the last case that I wanted to talk about. This is such a fucking weird case. Now this was actually the basis so far of a 2016 Lifetime movie called The Watcher, which I have seen. It's kind of loosely based on that. They changed a lot of the details, which I'll get into later on. But as I said earlier in the show, I believe that in late 2018, Netflix had purchased the rights to this particular news story with a view to making a movie or a series about it. So we'll see how this goes. Now, this is a fairly recent story. The crazy shit started in June of 2014. Now, this is the Broaddus family, Derek and Maria, and they had 3 children who at the time in 2014 were 5, 8, and 10 years old. Now, the Broadduses had just purchased a very nice $1.3 million house in Westfield, New Jersey, at 657 Boulevard. The house had been built, I believe, in 1905. It's a really nice house. There's pictures of it all over the web, so I'm not giving away anything about like the address, or everybody knows what the address of it is. So on this particular evening in June 2014, they had purchased the house, but they were doing renovations on it, so they hadn't actually moved into it yet. But Derek Broaddus was at the house, like, checking shit out, and he checked the mail, and there was a bunch of junk in there, and then there was also this kind of a white card, like an envelope. And on the front of the envelope, it said, "The new owner," like in this kind of thick handwriting.
No postage?
There was postage, but there was no return address.
Okay.
I think most of these were processed through, because I think that some of the shit that I saw about this, because I watched a couple kind of documentaries or news stories about this, and some of them said that somebody was just putting this stuff in their mailbox without it going through the post office. But I think that's a misconception. Okay. I think it is actually going through the post office, but no, there's never any return address. So this says "the new owner" on it. So he opens it, and the first 2 sentences sound kind of nice, kind of neighborly. "Dear newest neighbor, dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." Well, thank you very much, total random stranger. Mm-hmm. However, very quickly, the letter got weird. Then it says, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within?"
Ghosts call you. Yeah.
657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, because as I said, it was built in 1905, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. Now, the creepy thing about this is that apparently this person, whoever it is that's writing these letters, was already watching them, because he knew that they drove a Honda minivan. He knew that there were contractors in the house doing renovations on the inside, because he wrote, I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. He also knew that they had 3 children, because he says in the letter, you have children, I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. He also asked if they were going to have more, because he said, quote, do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me.
Okay, this guy already sounds like he's like a ghost buff. I think he's totally fabricated, of course, the history of 3 generations of watching this damn house. You know, it sounds like a hoax to me. It sounds like somebody who's just trying to stalk a family.
Well, yeah, clearly.
And he's going to put a paranormal spin on it. He's been watching too many fucking episodes of The Haunting. That's what it sounds like so far. This is the first time I've ever heard of this case.
Yeah, this actually, it got a lot of traction like a couple years back just because it's so fucking weird.
All right.
So, as I said, the envelope had no return address on it, but the letter went on to say, who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Then he said, welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. And then the signature at the bottom was actually not a signature. It was just like a script font because it was all like in typewritten.
Yeah.
And it was signed The Watcher.
Oh, shit. Here we go.
So Derek brought us, alarmed, as you would be.
It almost sounds like the fantasies of a kid.
Well, I'll get into that a little bit. So he turns off all the lights so nobody can see in the house. He calls the Westfield Police Department. Now, an officer comes out, reads the letter, says, quote, what the fuck is this? Because it's super weird.
Right.
Now, he asked Derek, he's like, do you have any enemies? Do you have any idea who might have sent this to you? And he's like, no, I have no idea. The cop was just like, well, they weren't staying in there yet, like I said, because it was still being renovated. He said, well, pretty much all I can think of to do, just move all the shit off the porch just in case there is a guy like hanging around here and he'll throw the shit through the window and break in or whatever. So at this stage, Derek and his family kind of confer about this kind of stuff. Now, at first they didn't, their kids were little. They were only like 5, 8, and 10. So they didn't tell them about the Watcher stuff because they didn't want to freak them out and they hadn't moved into the house yet. And they were still staying in their old house while the new one was being renovated. So what they did was they wrote an email to the previous owners of the house, John and Andrea Woods. Now, they had actually lived there for 23 years and at first said that they had had no problems with any weird, letters or anything like that. Now, then they did say, like, they get an email the next day from the Woods family, and they said, we lived there for over 20 years. We never had anything happen. But a few days before we moved out, we got a weird note, too. But since it wasn't threatening, pretty much all this letter said that, I've been watching the house this whole time, and you guys took good care of it, or something like that. They thought it was strange, but they didn't feel like it was threatening, so they just crumpled it up and threw it out because it was anonymous and they didn't know who it was from. So when the Broaddus family went to the police and were like talking to them about it, the police said, okay, well, I would advise that you don't tell any of your neighbors or any of your friends or anything like that about these letters because now, like, everyone who lives around you is a suspect for doing this. Because obviously it's someone that is watching you. They know what kind of car you drive. They know what's going on in your house. They know how many kids you have and all this other kind of shit. So obviously over the next few weeks, even though they were still not living in the house, they were still spending a lot of time there, like overseeing the renovations and whatnot. And they were a little nervous, as you would be, because they had little kids. Basically the guy canceled a work trip that he'd been taking on because he didn't want to leave his wife and kids alone. The kids, they wouldn't let him out of their sight because they were afraid they'd wander off and get kidnapped or whatever. And then there was like creepy shit where there was another couple on the block that wanted to come in and see the house, like how it was being fixed up and stuff. So they were giving him a tour, and they said that the wife actually said at one point, quote, "It'll be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood," which they thought was a little weird because that's something they said in the letter. There was also some minor vandalism around, like some kind of signs that the contractors put up that were torn out, shit like that. Now, 2 weeks after the first letter came, another letter arrived. This one said, welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time, they will.
This sounds like a kid. I think this is a kid living in one of those houses in the neighborhood. Know what I mean? I'm picturing kind of like a 14 or a 15-year-old fucking kid listening to black metal music. He's been getting off into King Diamond and shit, thinking about all these damn, hauntings and, crimes that have happened in houses going back generations and ghosts and shit. That's what I think this is. I don't think it's a homeowner. I think it's a son of one of the homeowners in that area.
Maybe.
And maybe he's like in 7th or 8th grade, something like that. And he's fucking with that family.
Well, like I said, I'll get in.
Somebody who's got a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. That's my hunch so far.
Okay. So now in this letter, apparently the watcher had learned their names. He called them Mr. and Mrs. Braddis, which is pretty close. Their name was Broadus. It was a little bit misspelled. He also knew their kids' birth order and their nicknames, which meant that he must have been within earshot.
Yeah.
Because, the mom would call their names when they were out playing in the yard. So it was obviously someone that could hear her.
Yeah.
So the letter says, I'm pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often.
He's got one of those parabolic microphones.
Yeah, maybe.
Like you can point and he's listening to them talk to each other when they're out in the front yard or getting into the car, that kind of stuff. And then over a period of time, he can piece together what people's names are. It's going to be some shit.
But they're
like
nicknames, not their real names.
Yeah, well, they hear him saying their nicknames.
So, like I said, it had to be somebody that could hear them.
In that area, and he's got one
and
of those
it was somebody that
microphones.
could see in because one of the girls, like the daughter, had a little artist easel, like on this enclosed porch that was like, it was closed in and then it had like all these trees around it. And she would go in there and paint or draw or whatever. And the letter said that he had seen the little girl using the easel and asked, is she the artist in the family?
He's got spy equipment, he's got, like I said, he's got one of those microphones that can hear long distance. He's got telescopes. He lives within eye shot of that house.
Yeah, well, that's what they figured.
Yeah, and I think
it has to.
I think he's a kid, but okay.
So the letter goes on to say, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them.
He's trying to scare them.
It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
He's trying to scare them.
Well, it would scare me if they were talking about my kid. Holy crap. And they know like all this stuff about them. Because obviously he's watching and listening to you.
He's saying the ghosts in the house are going to get him. And that
I wouldn't interpret it
trying
that
way. He's trying to say, have you found the dead bodies within the walls? And this is a ghost story, I think.
Yeah.
I think so far. We'll see.
Yeah. So
Sounds like something a kid make up.
So it goes on to say, will they sleep in the attic or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. So that's not ghosts. He's talking about him.
Yeah. Oh no, he's saying he's saying he's spying on him.
Yeah.
But he's also basically he's saying that there are ghosts in the house. I
suppose.
Yeah. He's also saying that there are ghosts in the house.
Yeah.
He's talking about, what's in the walls and watching it for generations and the house is a killer and, type of a deal. And I think he's trying to say that the house is haunted.
Yeah. So he says, excuse me. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to.
Yeah.
I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Braddis family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. Now, at this point, because the kids had been threatened, Derek and Maria said, okay, well, we're not going to bring the kids to the house anymore. And then they were like, well, now they're reconsidering moving in because, like I said, they hadn't moved in yet. They were still renovating. Now, because they didn't move in when they were technically supposed to, 3 weeks later, another letter comes that says, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. Now, as I said, this house in particular, there hadn't been any weird things about it prior, other than a few days before the Woods moving out. They said they had got kind of a weird letter, but not a threatening one. So it seemed to be like the Broadduses were the target of the main attacks. So they figured out that the letters, though they had no return address, all the postmarks were from Kearney in northern New Jersey. Now, interestingly, the first letter was postmarked June 4th, and this was before the sale of the house had been made public. So again, they're thinking this is somebody that lives in the neighborhood and knows all of this stuff going on because there had been no for sale sign. The Woods had not put a for sale sign up because when they knew in the neighborhood they were moving, like they had a lot of offers, like very generous offers, even more than their asking price, because this is like a really, really nice house, a really, really nice neighborhood. So they didn't need to list it. They didn't need to put a sign in the yard, anything like that. So interestingly, whoever wrote this letter wrote it before the sale was public.
Yeah.
So this was must have been somebody with some inside information. Derek and Maria also pointed out how scary it was that he talked about the little girl with the easel, because they said to see into that, yes, it was a porch, like an enclosed porch, but they said the porch is covered up by like trees and shit. Like you can't just walk by the house and see into it, is what they're saying. So they're wondering how this person is like seeing into it, if they're like actually coming up and looking into the fucking shit or something.
No, they might just be claiming to have the ability to do that. That this person's
but they knew about the easel.
It's visible from where though? The backyard, maybe?
No, they said it wasn't visible. That's what they're saying. They said that it was an enclosed porch, and it's like there was like trees all around it. You know what I mean? So they were saying it would have been really difficult. Like somebody had to get right up on it.
Could it be one of the contractors or a kid of one of the contractors?
Possibly.
Who knew about this sale, or it's something like that. It's somebody who knew that family, the old family, was leaving and knew that the other family was coming.
Yeah, that's why
maybe somebody in the housing commission, or a child of somebody who runs the housing commission, if there is a homeowners association.
Yeah, I'm not
sure. Something like that. Somebody whose their kid has access to that knowledge.
Yeah.
And has a lot of time on their hands and wants to pull off this fucking creepy hoax.
Yeah.
Because this is not the kind of stuff that a full-grown mastermind criminal is interested in. It doesn't make profit. And it's not yielding any victims.
It might just be a crazy person, though. I mean, clearly it's a crazy person.
Could just be a crazy person, but I kind of think it's more like a young person who has a lot of time on their hands.
Maybe.
And it's fantasy prone. And kind of getting off on this power, kind of like a prank phone call.
Yeah.
Something like that. It might be a person who's a little bit older. It's kind of like getting off on a prank type phone call.
Yeah.
Having power over people. Could be something like that. It might have been one of the... somebody in connection with the sale of that house.
Yeah.
Somebody in one of the crews, or somebody in the housing commission, something like that.
But so, the Broadduses had been at a barbecue in the neighborhood. And Derek gets to talking to this guy named John Schmidt, who lived like 2 doors down from the house that they had bought. Now, John Schmidt told him about this family that lived in the house between their houses. And this was the Langford family. Now, Peggy Langford was 90 years old, or in her 90s. And a bunch of her adult children, who were all in their 60s, lived in that house with her. Now, everybody in the neighborhood thought they were a little weird. They didn't think they were dangerous. They just thought they were like kind of weird. Now, one of the younger ones was named Michael Langford. And they kind of like started looking at this guy a little bit more closely because they said this guy, he was either in his 50s or his 60s. He was like an older guy. They were all older.
Right.
So a couple of the things that they thought was interesting was that the Langford house was pretty much right next to where the enclosed porch was, like with the easel, so somebody could like kind of cross the road and look at like the yard.
Yeah.
The family had actually lived there since the 1960s. So that kind of went along with the whole watcher thing. And it's like, oh, I've been watching and blah, blah, blah. The father of the family, who, would have been in his 90s, actually died 12 years earlier, which kind of lined up with the thing in the watcher letter that said, I've been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. So maybe he's saying like, oh, I took over from my dad or whatever. So that kind of checked out too.
A lot of time on his hands.
Yes, because like I said, these were all like retired people, and this Michael Langford didn't have a job or anything like that. They
what
said
did he do before?
I don't know, but they said like he had like a big beard like Ernest Hemingway, but they everybody in the neighborhood thought that they weren't dangerous, but they thought they were a little weird. Like
did he ever have a job, or was he somebody that lived off of family wealth or something?
I don't know. Like I said, it might have been because this is like a pretty wealthy area. It's a pretty wealthy. Like I said, even this particular house that this family moved into was over $1 million.
I think you're onto something there. That sounds
now,
right.
well, here's the thing though. So the Broaddus family like approaches the police and said, "Hey, do you know about this Langford family?" And they're like, "Yeah, we do know about them." And actually, a week after the first letter had arrived, they actually brought Michael Langford to the police headquarters and interviewing him. Now, Michael said that he didn't know anything about the letters, but according to the cop, or at least according to what the Broaddus's later said the cop told them, said, how he was saying things and like how he was describing things sounded a little bit like the letter, and they thought it was kind of suspicious, but they didn't have enough hard evidence to hold him. So at this point, the Broadduses are kind of frustrated because they keep getting these letters. The police can't really do much of anything because they don't have any physical evidence at this point. I mean, the letters don't have any fingerprints or anything like that on them. So Derek decides he's going to kind of set up his own. He sets up fucking cameras everywhere, like, night vision cameras. He's got like the lights. He's got all this other kind of shit. And he starts like making all these notes. It's like, and he made like these maps of like, who's within earshot of the house, who can see the house from which angle and all this other kind of stuff. So he kind of got obsessed with it. Yeah. And he said, his wife started thinking he was nuts because he just like spent so much time trying to figure out who the fuck this was. But he made the point that is like, this person threatened my kids. You know what I mean? He's like, he said, quote, it's like, where I'm from, if you do that, you get your ass beat. Yeah. So obviously he wanted to find this fucking person and find out who they were. And he knew that they had to be somewhere close around there. So he's basically trying to stake out the place and like find out who this is. They also hired like, very special investigators, like, from the FBI and all this other kind of stuff to look into it. Now they got this former FBI agent, and he kind of did a profile on this person. Now, in his opinion, because of the way that the letters were written, he thought that maybe this was an older guy, because he says that the way the envelope was addressed was like M/M Broaddus, like Mr. and Mrs., and it's like nobody does that anymore.
Yeah, it's old-fashioned shit.
And he also said that he would sometimes start, like, how you put like the date like up in the corner of the letter and stuff, like he would also put like the weather up there, like sunny and cool for stuff, which is something that like old-timey people used to do. Also, the letters were typed and they had 2 spaces in between the sentences, which was something that they used to teach you to do like a long time ago. Yeah. It's even, some people still do it nowadays, and it drives me up a fucking wall. Oh my God. Like, yeah, you used to have to do that with an old fucking typewriter, like back in the day, but you don't have to do it anymore, so stop it. Because every now and then I find some people that still do that, like in emails and stuff, and it drives me up the wall. They also said the way it was written suggested, like I said, an older person and someone who read a lot. You know what I mean?
A shut-in.
Yeah, somebody like that.
Yeah.
Now, there were also like a couple weird like typos, like a couple kind of idiosyncrasies. Like one of the first letter was actually addressed, like it was dated Tuesday, June 4th, even though June 4th was a Wednesday. This was somebody that was
You know what? Probably written at fucking near midnight.
Maybe.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Lost track of time type of deal.
They also noted that a lot of the letters had what they called a seething anger directed toward wealthy people. Because one of the letters said something about, are you one of those Hoboken transplants who are ruining Westfield? Like they were bitching about new people moving, new money people moving into the neighborhood.
Possibly somebody who's never had a job.
Yeah, so this might be like an old money type of person, and they don't like the people moving in, or something like that. It just seems really weird. And another one of the letters said something like, about the renovations that they were making. The house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history, even though they weren't doing anything super fancy. It is a nice house, like it's fancy inside, but it cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father, but he kept watching until the day he died, and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again.
So he played in it as a kid.
Or so he said.
So he claims.
So at that point, because of that statement, they started investigating, like, maybe a family that used to live there, like, had a housekeeper and they had a kid and, like, they were pissed off about the rich people or something like that. They're, like, looking into all the angles.
Could also be just a, you know what I mean, diversionary fucking shit.
It could be that, too. Yeah. Like I said, this could just be, like, a completely fantasy print. I mean, obviously, this person is watching the house, obviously, because they know all this stuff about it. But the thing about it, yes, he's making threats. It's like, but you have to take that seriously. I mean, because you never know, like, who's going to act on that kind of shit.
He's got a lot of time on his hands.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So now at this point, they are still kind of concentrating on this Michael Langford guy. And what they did was they wrote a letter to him in the guise of, we're writing to everybody in the neighborhood. We're going to tear the house down, because they wanted to see if he would have any reaction. But nothing happened. They also
do it.
Yeah, they also brought him in for a second interview, but that didn't go anywhere either. At this point, his sister Abby, started accusing the police of harassing them, and all this other kind of shit. So, and they got a lawyer, and there was just like a whole big fucking thing. Now, even though Michael Langford does sound like a pretty good suspect, the police did note, they said, look, we talked to him after the first letter arrived at the Broaddus' house, and then another letter came after that. And they thought that if it was Michael Langford and he thought the police were onto him, it would be really stupid to, like, send another one. Not saying that it wasn't him. I'm just saying that that would be kind of a dumb thing to do, and the police thought it was just kind of a dumb thing to do. They also said we need to consider other, wider range of people in the neighborhood, because within a few blocks of that house, there were 2 registered child sex offenders. So they thought that was a little weird. Also, one guy who was there, like, painting the Broaddus' house, he said, when I was there painting the house, I saw this old couple who lived in the house behind yours, and they have a pair of lawn chairs out in the backyard that are very, very close to your house, like weirdly close to your house. And it's like there's this older guy sitting in one of the chairs, and the chair was facing y'all's house. You know what I mean? So there's more than one, like, sketchy motherfucker in this neighborhood, is what I'm saying. So as I said, there are no fingerprints, there are nothing. So by the end of 2014, they pretty much run out of options, of what to do next. The Broaddus had alarms installed and all this other kind of shit. But they weren't sure if they should actually, like, move into the house or not. Like, even though it had all these alarms and stuff, like I said, they were scared for their kids' safety, because this person is clearly watching them. So, and another thing too is that as the time goes on and they're deciding what to do about this house, they're still getting more letters, and they're seemingly getting weirder and weirder. Like, then they got one later on that said, 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back.
What's funny is if this guy actually believes all this stuff that he's writing, why wasn't he writing this before to the other people that lived there?
That's what's weird about it.
See, he's claiming that he's been in on this fucking demon house for fucking decades, but he didn't contact anybody else that lived there?
Yeah.
I'm not buying it. I think it's a hoax.
Well, yeah, like I said, it could be.
It's a prank. Not really, not a hoax, it's a prank.
Yeah, it's just why target this one family in particular, though? Like, none of the other... Because that house had been there since 1905, and... There had been lots of people had lived in it.
Somebody just got a wild hair, you know. Somebody kind of snapped and decided they were going to do it.
Yeah, I guess it just seems really weird.
I got a weird feeling that's a kid, but it could be an old retired guy. It could be, but I think it's more.
The FBI profilers seem to think it was just because the way the letters were structured and stuff. That sounded more like an old person.
Right. They're probably right. Yeah.
Because why would a young kid like put two spaces?
But it's almost like a childlike fantasy.
It is, but it might be like a crazy old guy.
Yeah, it could be.
Maybe he's like reverted back to...
Maybe he had a stroke or something weird happened and...
Yeah, maybe he's developing some mental illness.
And all of a sudden, it just happened all of a sudden. He started writing. So it could have been something like that. Mental deterioration.
So at this point, the Broadduses are like... They don't know what to do. Okay, their previous house has already sold, and they are afraid to move into the new one. They've been staying with Maria's parents... and they're having all kind of like so like she had to go to a therapist. She had like PTSD. They both had to start taking sleeping pills.
Why do people get all wrapped up over this shit, man?
Well, like I said, it's their kids.
I understand
this is a person that's threatening their kids.
But you also have to know bullshit artists when you see one.
And it's like, do you really want to live in a house and feel like somebody's fucking watching you every second of every day? Because it seems like this dude is like watching. He knows what they're doing and shit like that. I don't think I would.
Well, I would assume that the person was lying.
Yeah, but a lot of people, when this story went viral, a lot of people said that, but I don't know if I would want to live like that, though.
I'd just say, come on, come into this house. You can come into this house anytime you want to. You're not going to leave, but you can come in anytime you want to, but you won't leave this house. Not in one piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, But like I said,
I handle shit like this.
If you had kids, it might be different, though.
I handle shit like this.
Because the kids...
I'd have every
the
kid...
The thing is, it's like...
I'd have a damn collar camera on all my kids. Yeah, like a body cam.
But that's like, is that really the way you want to live, though? Like I said, it just seems like, and that's what the family was saying. It's like we feel like we'd have to live in a fortress all the time because we'd have to have all these alarms. It's like we'd have to watch the kids every second because they have to leave, they have to go to school. It's like and shit like that. And they have to play in the yard. It's like somebody could snatch them. It's like so.
Somebody really wanted those kids. They wouldn't say a word. They just get them.
I know, but it's like
this is somebody who's trying to use intimidation tactics and spin a kind of yarn. I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it.
I mean, I probably wouldn't either, but it would still freak me out, like, because it would be something you would think about all the time, and it would stress me out. I don't think I would like.
I probably would have laughed it off.
I don't think I would like to live like that because it just seems like harassment, and you just like feel like somebody's fucking watching you all the time, and I would hate that. Yeah. So I can understand where they're coming from, and like I said, especially because they have little kids, and the little kids have to leave the house, and they worry about them. So it's like I can see that. But so they decide, okay, so 6 months of this fucking shit, like I said, they're living with Maria's parents because their old house is sold and they don't want to move into the new one. So finally they decide that they're going to sell it. Problem is, there had been, even though they didn't really, I mean, they mostly kept us on the down low because, like I said, the cops are like, don't tell all your neighbors that you're getting these letters because a lot of them are suspects and we don't want it getting out. However, kind of shit got out about it anyway, particularly because people started to wonder what, they bought this house and they did all these renovations. They're not moving in. So what the hell's going on? And like when their friends and shit would ask them about it, they'd be like, oh, we're just having legal issues. And that's all they would say. So everyone was starting to think it was a little weird. And as I said, shit started to get around about the neighborhood that there was like a stalker or a sexual predator or there was something like that about the house. So they couldn't get any offers on the house. Like even though they lowered the price to like less than they had paid for it, and even people that were like, oh yeah, and they said it didn't bother them, then they would like come to the house and they'd be like, yeah, forget it. Like after they read the letters, they're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Now, another...
That might have been the motive, actually, to drive people out of the house and make it a bench.
It could have been.
So that he could run back through it like he was a kid.
Yeah.
Might be something like
It
that.
could have been. Now, one thing that the Broaddus family did do, and I respect this, actually, they told that their realtor, who was from Coldwell Banker, they said, we are going to, like, people that come and are interested in buying the house, we are going to partially disclose that there is a person that says that they're watching the house, and they will send letters and blah, 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 because they said we would hate for someone else to buy the house and have the same thing happen to them. Now, I should note that in New Jersey, apparently you don't have to disclose if there was like a murder or a haunting or whatever, because like some states you have to, like New York you have to, like if you're selling a house, if someone was murdered in it or if it's supposedly haunted. There was like a famous case, I think it was in Long Island, where they legally ruled that the house was haunted, and so like that's something that you have to disclose. In New Jersey you don't have to, but they decided that they would anyway. Now they said, now if somebody was interested enough to like make an offer on the house, then we will let them read the letters so they know what they're getting into, just in case, which I think that's kind of a cool thing for them, because that would kind of suck to like buy a $1.3 million house and then like you have some fucking crazy dude like writing to you all the time. That's something I think I would like to have.
You know what I would do is every time somebody mailed me one of those letters, I just wouldn't open it. I just give it right to the police.
Yeah, you just give it right to the or
just give it right, yeah. Now, give the police the evidence that they need. Yeah. But I wouldn't let that dude try to fucking fuck with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd just send the letter right to the police. I wouldn't even open it.
Yeah.
That's how you deal with that.
But yeah, so another thing that happened too was that because of the whole thing that they went through with the disclosure and everything, the Broadduses decided to sue the Woods family for not telling them about the weird shit that they had got before they moved out. And it turned out that because I think it was like a reporter from a local newspaper actually saw the complaint, and they saw some of the excerpts of the Watcher's letter, and he ended up publishing it, and that's how the story went viral. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of how, just because of the lawsuit between the two of them. Now, the lawsuit was actually dismissed, and the Broadduses appealed, but that was also thrown out. And they just got like all, after it went, after the story broke nationally, then they got all kind of fucking media requests and all this kind of shit, but they didn't really want to do it. At this point, they went and stayed at a friend's beach house and ended up having to tell their kids what was going on because the kids didn't have any idea, like I said. So there was a lot of nervousness in the neighborhood. A lot of the neighbors were pissed because they felt like the Broadduses had lowered their property values and all this other kind of shit that they would say. And the cops didn't really seem to be catching anybody. Now, another thing that came out later on about Michael Langford, one of the first suspects, was that another reason why they suspected him is that because when he was younger, he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was actually known to walk through other people's yards and look in their windows, even though no one had thought that particularly alarming at the time. And I guess he'd never been like reported to the police or anything like that. And when they asked some of the neighbors about it, they're like, oh, well, we never thought he meant any harm. He was just kind of doing like checking on people. You know what I mean? So I thought it was kind of weird. Now, it did turn out later on, though, that they were able to get DNA off of one of the envelopes of the Watcher letters, I guess from and guess what? The DNA was from a woman.
Okay.
So then they started investigating Michael Langford's sister, because they did definitely think that maybe it has something to do with that family.
Yeah.
But the Langford family are adamant that there's nothing to do. It's like, we've lived here for however, I mean, their family had lived there for decades and decades. It's like, we never caused anybody trouble, and suddenly this family tries to move in and they start getting all these letters, and now everybody's accusing us and all this other kind of shit. There was also some shit that came out.
Did they give up any DNA?
Yeah, no match.
Okay.
So the cops have specifically said no one in this Langford household is responsible for this.
Unless they put somebody else's DNA on that thing on purpose.
Unless they were that smart.
They were that smart, yeah.
Yeah. So, but the police did supposedly tell the Broadduses, they're like, look, we don't think it's anybody in that house because the DNA doesn't match anybody in that house. It doesn't match anybody in that family. So unless, like you said, they specifically put it, because apparently none of the other letters had fingerprints or DNA or anything. It was just this one letter that they got it off of, and it was a female DNA. But like you said, they could have got it from anywhere. They could have stole it from somebody.
Yeah, and then stole that DNA from somebody, and then wrote a letter on it, sent it over there, and it says, watch them send, this will clear us.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be something a genius would do. Whoever it is has a lot of spare time.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, and would do diversionary tactics.
Yeah. True.
They'll figure out who it is eventually.
Yeah, another person they looked into was the 21-year-old son of the Woods, who were the couple that had lived there before, but they don't think it was him either. Another very broad, and this is kind of, and I don't think this is true, but a lot of people, especially when this story kind of went viral and showed up on Facebook and stuff, a lot of people thought that the Broadduses pulled it as a hoax, either because motivations that people put forward were either that, oh, they bought this super expensive house and then realized they couldn't afford it, and so thought they would pull this as like some kind of elaborate thing to get out of it.
That's plausible.
Yeah, but it just, I mean, they went through so much trouble and stress. They never actually lived in the house. They never moved into it.
Okay.
I mean, they lived in their old house for a while, then their old house sold, then they moved in with Maria's parents, and then they weren't sure if they were going to move in the house because of the fucking letters, so then they moved to their friend's beach house. So they didn't really get anything out of it.
And they were paying for that house and not.
And they were paying for it while they were paying the mortgage and the property taxes on it the whole time.
I'd have moved right in.
So why would they do that?
I'd have dropped my nuts and moved right into that damn house.
I probably would have too, but like I said, I would still worry about it though.
I'd say, come in here and get me, man. Come in here and get me.
You know?
But I think that, to me, the way you're deciphering those letters, I didn't see that as a threat directly from the writer onto the kids. I thought the writer was saying that the demons and the ghosts in the house, and that the house was kind of possessed, and that the house would hurt the kids.
Yeah.
That's how I'm interpreting it, is that he's trying to do a haunted house story.
Yeah, maybe.
That's how I interpreted it.
I mean, later on, like as the investigation went on, they discovered that that another family on the street had also gotten a similar letter, but they had also thrown it away. They didn't have any little kids, so they weren't super worried about it. They just thought it was weird, so
somebody
they chucked it out.
who lives on that block has some kind of weird.
Well, they know that it
fetish.
has to be somebody that lives around there. It has to be.
Yeah.
Because this is somebody that no one notices. I mean, no one notices anybody like crawling around in these people's backyard or like looking in their windows. No one notices.
Somebody that they talk to, I think, and that they don't suspect.
Yeah.
It's real harmless. And they're living this fantasy life of writing these fucking weird ass letters.
Yeah.
And, wigging people out.
Now, some people have also accused the Broadduses of like trying to pull an Amityville Horror kind of shit.
It reminds me of a Amityville Horror.
The thing about it is, though, they're not profiting off it because they've turned down like most media offers because they're like, we don't want the fucking deal with it. And when Lifetime wanted to make a movie about it, they didn't want them to do it, and they sent them like a cease and desist to make them stop. But the movie went ahead anyway. They changed some details. Like I said, the movie was actually set in L.A. The person was called the Raven, and they turned up like in a bird suit and shit like that.
People kind of make a lot of assumptions. This isn't the 1970s anymore. You can't make a lot of money with a paranormal story.
No.
Like, we've got all kinds of offers for Mammoth Mountain. There's no money involved in them. Some of them we like the thing that we did for NPR radio. We ain't making money on that.
No.
Did that for free just because we wanted to.
Yeah.
It didn't even really sell any books. It didn't even really have much of an impact on that. We've had some other people come and offer damn television stuff, but we're real skeptical of that. You don't make any money on it. It's just kind of a waste of time, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind doing it just like to get shit out there, like to to raise the kind of
But
profile
it's almost
of
like
it.
we got the book there. People like if they want to buy the book, they can buy the book. I guess you would think that if there was a television program, that it would sell books, but it doesn't. Though they just watch the TV program.
Yeah.
They don't buy the book, so it doesn't.
Only a small percentage of people.
Yeah, it's not like 1972 where you could have a book, and a book go out to make millions of dollars. That era is long gone.
Well, especially like you said with something paranormal.
Yeah, paranormal shit. Nobody gives a shit about that.
So I really don't think, even though the family, and it sucks because like this family has been subjected to a great deal of abuse. both online and elsewhere. And because they still live in Westfield, they actually ended up buying another house, like in the same town, because that was where Maria, the wife, that's where she had grown up, and she wanted her to raise her kids there. I mean, understandably. But she's like, she can't go anywhere now without people knowing who she is, and it's like, you know, she runs into people from that neighborhood all the time, and it's really awkward. So it's like, you know, kind of sucky. So as far as I know, the only other suspect that they had, some of the investigators were actually staking out the house one night. They were sitting in the back of a van with some binoculars. Around 11 p.m., they see a car stopping in front of the house for long enough that the inspectors thought it was a little suspicious. So they ended up tracing the car to a young woman who lived the next town over. Now, her boyfriend lived on that block.
She was scoping him out. Did she stake his house out?
No, the cops were staking out that house.
Okay.
And then this car stopped in front of that house for a long time. And they traced the car to this woman. She lived the next town over. Her boyfriend lived on that block.
She wasn't staking her own boyfriend
I
house?
don't know who was in the car, though. I don't know if she was in the car or he was in the car.
Now, they got some women out there that'll stake out a man's house and see if he's leaving.
Maybe, but that wasn't his house. That wasn't his house. That was,
they were checking out the house.
Yeah.
Maybe they heard about the story.
That's possible too. But they just wanted to check it out. So they thought, now this is a little bit of a stretch, but like I said, they have to like investigate everything. So they interviewed this woman, and she said that her boyfriend played some quote unquote dark video games, I guess like horror video games or something like that, and had a character that was named the Watcher. So weird. I don't know.
Weird, yeah.
So the boyfriend was not living on that street anymore. Now, they called him, and he said that he would come to the police and be interviewed, but he never showed up.
Did the letter stop?
I think that they have stopped at this point.
And did they ever move into the house?
No, but they never moved into the house. They bought another house in the same town. They rented this house out.
Okay.
So
and those people never got any letters?
I don't think so. Like the guy that lived there, he has a thing. He won't tell anybody his last name. He just goes by Chris because he doesn't want the media attention. He said that there was a little codicil in his lease that if he got any letters, that he could break the lease without being. She said her boyfriend lived up the street, and he used to, yeah. He used to, and that was his screen name. How old was the boyfriend? What is she talking? What was she talking about? I don't know.
Remember, I said I thought it was a young guy who had a lot of time on his hands, and somebody who's into kind of like ghost stories and shit.
Yeah.
She said he played dark video games. What are you talking about? They're talking about, Silent Hill.
I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Silent Hill and shit.
And like I said, I'm a little bit skeptical of that too, because you know how people are, where it's like, oh, the video games, and he played this, that, and the other thing, where it's like, everybody plays video games. It's not like a weirdo thing. It's just like, I don't know. So it's just like the way they used to say people that like listen to heavy metal and shit, like, oh, they all worship the devil. It's like, man, fuck off with that. So it just sounds like old people like talking about young people.
Some of that real sinister shit, though, turns out to be mundane crap. Like, they found a damn VHS tape in the garbage, or it was sitting on the side of the road, and somebody watched it, and it's like the maniacal laughter of I see it burning, and it's this house burning, and they're going, what the fuck, what house is that, and what is on fire, who's this satanic motherfucker? And it took them years to find out who that was on the videotape and what house was on fire.
Yeah.
And it was a teenage kid who lived in a house. He was pretty, they said he was cool. The cops said he was real cool because they found him later. And he grew up playing in some woods, and that woods got purchased by some developers, and while they were building new houses in there, he set some of them on fire.
Yeah.
And he videotaped it.
I know that story.
You know that story?
Yeah.
And
we watched it together.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm telling the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember, there's more than one person here listening to this story. So he had his whole garage set up like a damn haunted house, and they were making films and videos in there to each other. And he was talking to his buddy. Was his buddy Count Orlok or something like that? He had all these weird names for his friends.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they ended up sending him to like counseling. Really.
Yeah.
But if you were to just see that videotape, they thought that they were dealing with like some kind of weird serial arsonist or serial murderer, you know what I mean? But he was just role playing. He was LARPing.
Yeah.
He did set some shit on fire, you know. He did some time for it, but I think he did some time in kind of like a mental place. I wouldn't say a mental home, but you know, mental hospital or something, you know.
Yeah.
Make sure that he wasn't totally off his fucking rocker. But really, you know, it was just teenage kids, you know, acting crazy.
Yeah, they do dumb shit.
They do dumb shit, yeah.
But yeah, so like I said, now there was some other shit I didn't get into with this where like, you know, at first, like before the Broadduses like rented the house out, they tried to get like the house torn down, the lot split, all this other kind of stuff, and they wouldn't let them do it. And I think I said before that the letter stopped. They did not. I was mistaken about that. Apparently, like I said, this family, you know, move into the house. They rented it. They had a thing in their lease that said, you know, if we get any letters, we can break the lease if we want to do that and not get punished for it. Now, 2 weeks after, I think after the renters moved in, now Derek Broaddus, they're still the owners of the house, obviously. So there were some squirrels that were like all up in the roof. So Derek comes to the house to take care of it. And the renter hands him a letter that had just arrived that very day, and it said, "Violent winds and bitter cold to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move." They also knew all about all the media that had happened, you know, after the story went viral, because he said, "I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. I watched you as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions." He also knew about the attempts that the Broadduses had made to get the house torn down and the lot split. Because there was like all these big meetings about it, you know what I mean? And finally their request was denied because the lots would be too small and all this other legal kind of shit. So what the letter said was, 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates, because there'd been a lot of people at the meeting that didn't want that to happen because they said the houses would be ugly or they'd be too small or whatever.
I'm sure he was at that meeting.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he was. That's why he probably said, you know, turn around, idiots, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he was probably there. Because, like I said, I'm sure he probably lived in the neighborhood, and that's who was at that meeting. He says, "My soldiers of the boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher." This guy also mentioned the name of the person that was renting the house. So the renter had just moved in like a couple weeks prior. Now the renter was like freaked out because they had mentioned him by name in this particular letter, but he said he will stay on the condition that you install more cameras like all around the house and around the mailbox and everything like that. So just in case like some more shit happens.
Somebody in the housing commission.
So maybe. He also said that if the renter did anything specific that he didn't like, or if the family did anything specific that he didn't like, he said that revenge would come in many forms. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you feel sick day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break.
So now he's getting all terroristic on people.
Yeah. That's essentially what this is. Yeah. It's kind of like emotional terrorism, sure.
Yeah, he's full of shit.
Yeah, maybe. So, as I said...
He's just getting off on his power trip.
Yeah. They have no idea who this person could be, other than it's got to be somebody in the neighborhood, or like the son of somebody in the neighborhood, maybe an old guy in the neighborhood. But, yeah. So, like I said, this is a fucking weird ass case. It's still kind of ongoing.
If I was the cops, I would just announce that all letters will not be opened. They're just going to be sent to the police.
Yeah.
And that just clips all the fucking nuts off you know.
Yeah, because if this person isn't really going to do anything and they're just trying to get a rise out of you,
he'd have done something already.
Then the best course of action would probably
deny his
just
ability,
be
to deny his
ignore
ability,
it, like not let it upset you.
Yeah, what you do is you deny his ability to communicate with the victims. So what you do is Yeah, the police announced that all mysterious letters will just be sent to the police. They won't be opened.
Yeah.
So that means just the police get this, and they can build a case. And then
that would probably have been
the neighbors don't even know.
That would probably
They don't know what
be
was
the
in
best
there. That's
course
how
of
I would
action
do it.
going forward.
Yep.
Because like you said, I mean, yeah, if I had kids and, you know, and he did threaten animals also, so I'd be afraid for
but it's
Pookie.
the threat. It's the threat. And if he
But-
kills the animal without the threat, then there's no power in it.
Yeah.
Because the victim didn't even know. The victim never even heard the threat.
Yeah.
So that's what you do is you just
That probably would be the
just
best
silence
idea,
it. He'd have done something already.
Just don't open that.
He'd have done something already.
Yeah.
Well, he's harmless. He's either a little wimpy guy or a kid, or he's an old man. That's harmless.
I kind of suspect it's an old man.
Yeah. Or maybe an old lady, but probably old man.
Or a crazy old lady.
Yeah, and it may not be that
For some reason, it sounds like a man to me, though.
Yeah, and it could be that he's not really getting off so much on all these threats. What he is he can become the hero in front of everybody, that he's trying to catch this person or he's trying to save these people. It's something like that. It's almost kind of like a Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How much I bet he's real helpful.
Yeah,
he
he must be
stands
one of
up,
those weirdos.
Yeah, he's real helpful. He's taking care of people. So he's the threat and the solution. It's going to be that angle's probably going on.
Because that's some serial killer shit there. Because a lot of them will like help look for the victims and like be super forthcoming with information.
Well, they're looking for the victims so they can find out what the authorities
Yeah, but
know.
then too, it's
And
like
see if the body's found.
Plus, they think it's kind of like, you know,
It's also kind
hiding in plain sight. Type of thing, too.
Yeah.
I think they get off on the power.
Yeah, but
of
I don't
that
think he's
also.
doing. He may be doing a little bit of that, but I bet you he's also helping.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's terrible. You know, he's one of those kind of guys, bro.
Well, and the thing about it too is, like I said, I don't blame the family for not moving in, because not only is it just like constant stress and you got to worry about your kids, but also you can't trust any of your neighbors because it could be any one of them. So it's like you can't talk to them. You can't, like, every time you went outside the door, you'd be like, is it that guy?
Yeah,
Is it them? That would suck.
Well, he knows all about that.
That would suck.
He knows he's doing that. It's just that it's a game.
Yeah.
This is a game. It's not serious. If this dude was fucking dangerous, he'd have done something already.
Yeah. Although, I don't know.
In
I don't know
person-
if I would risk it.
He's in person. He's probably very timid.
Yeah, and I think the profiler did say something like
Yeah,
that.
he's
that
probably
this was was like a not macho.
Yeah, he's
guy.
probably very timid, and you'd never know. You'd never suspect him because he's not an imposing figure, and he's not threatening, and you know what I mean. That's all this is.
And like I said, even though the DNA that they found on the envelope was a woman's DNA, I don't know. Just something about the letters, the way they're written, sounds like a man.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like a man.
He got an envelope or a letter that was contaminated with female DNA, and he knew it was.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's.
And then
not
he
even
wrote
the
a letter on that
because none of the other ones had that.
Yeah.
I mean, and you could easily just
And
use
then
like gloves and like a little sponge.
And he could check and see if they were looking for DNA, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he could
And
get
that,
feedback.
that's a good.
So he could get feedback on his case, so he could know,
so he could see what was going on.
So he could see what was going on. He'd have peace of mind. You know what I mean? To see if they were onto him, that type of deal.
Yeah.
He wants to know what the investigators know.
Yeah.
He wants to know if they're close. If they're close yet. They're not close though.
Yeah.
Because it's a low priority. I'm gonna say that the criminal profile, the criminal investigators just see him as a nuisance.
Yeah, because he hasn't actually
No.
done anything to physically harm anyone.
Well, the guys that are dangerous don't give any warning. They just kill and rape, murder. And then maybe they might communicate after they did
They
it.
usually do it afterward.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
So you know,
This guy's just.
he's
a
not.
weirdo.
He's not like that. He's not. He's not. He's not. That's not what he's out after.
Yeah.
I think he's after the power of making people jump when he says jump, and then he can step in and as the hero occasionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And help these people. I bet you he's like a real helpful motherfucker.
Probably.
Yeah.
Just like old Dennis there.
Kind of like old Dennis, you know. I don't wanna talk. My voice isn't good, so I can't do Dennis.
He can't do Dennis
I
today.
can't do Dennis. Radio
Well,
today.
he was here in spirit. He was his little
Yeah.
bobblehead was here, and he was here with the Raven.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the Lifetime movie that they made about the Watcher case the actual guy that was sending them shit was not called. He didn't call himself the Watcher. He called himself the Raven. And every now and then you'd see like somebody like show up in like a creepy bird costume. Actually, I liked the movie in the beginning, but then I don't know. It didn't really stick. I remember that I saw it, and I remember like the first part was kind of creepy, like with the person in the bear suit.
Yeah.
But other than that, but you know, this case, like I said, is like there's a lot more like complicated, like legal shit and a bunch of other shit that went on that I didn't really have time to get into. But if you want like a really exhaustive like breakdown of this case, go to this website called The Cut. And they did like a humongous, and that's mostly where most of my notes came from because they did like a humongous thing.
They'll
and
eventually catch this guy too.
They probably
They'll
will.
eventually
I
get
mean,
him.
if he keeps writing letters, he's gonna fuck up at some point. And it's got to be somebody around there.
Yeah.
It has to be. So the suspect pool is very small.
It's
got to be somebody on that.
If you're
street.
communicating with law enforcement or your victims, you get caught.
Eventually, you will. Yeah, because you're gonna make a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, and it's usually something that they never really see coming.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. And I'm kind of excited to see this Netflix thing that they're going to make if it ever comes out.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think they just got the rights in December of last year, so I don't know how long it's going to take to make a movie out of that. All right. So that will do it for this probably extra long, topic show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I actually had a lot of fun doing this one. It was kind of fun. All the different shit, variety of things for everybody. Mm-hmm. So remember, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe on all your social media. If you really, really like the show and you love us very much, then you can go to our Patreon page, or you can go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a little link in the sidebar if you'd like to give a one-time donation through PayPal. That would be very much appreciated. And that will do it for episode 163. We will see you next time. Bye.